OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Bang on 7:30 this Thursday morning, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. We're here with you all the way through until 10. A very, very busy programme for you. We're going to talk about the Lions, who are still in action in South Africa in the midst of a raging COVID. I think it's the Delta variant, I'm not sure. But they're definitely having significant COVID issues. The team had 12 players and backroom staff in isolation yesterday and still managed to score 50 points. We're still going to wait till this afternoon if there's a game going ahead on Saturday evening. We're going to talk about Stephen Cluxton, who's in the papers as well, because obviously he was playing football last night, but just not in Dublin's colours. And very quickly, I think on this morning we should talk about what's in the newspapers. I'm going to start with the Guardian. The Guardian, top right-hand corner there. Really interesting story. It must be a silly season. Looks familiar. Why do we see faces and things? And then they have a whole feature on this. And then inside it, they've helpfully got pictures of like sourdough that you can see a human face in, and other things, which I'm not quite sure they are. Good story as well. Vardy may be forced to reveal talks with Sun reporters in Wags libel trial. Why are we not doing day-by-day coverage of the Wags libel trial? This is a failure on our part and a failure of journalism, I would say. Rebecca Vardy could be forced to provide Colleen Rooney with copies of any conversation she's had with journalists at The Sun following the latest twist in the long-running Wagatha Christie libel case. I would have thought the conversations with journalists were privileged, but maybe in a libel trial like this, maybe it's not. So that's one of the English papers. The Irish Daily Mail. This is very interesting, right? This is Love Island gets us loving. This, obviously, I mean, I'm too old for Love Island, Owen, but you've been banging on about Love Island a lot, and I wonder...
Great episode last night.
Well, I wonder, does this speak to you? Summer loving is on the minds of more than half of people, with Love Island inspiring people to try new things with their partner. Right. A huge 91% of people say they have more adventurous sex when they're abroad, and beaches, swimming pools and other outdoor beauty spots are favourite spots for it.
Finally, an answer.
Nice weather, scantily clad people and a break from work are some of the things encouraging people to get it on. So it should come as no surprise, 54% admit Love Island is getting the pulses racing and encouraging them to experiment sexually. That's why you're all watching Love Island. What's going on?
It's true. Like, I mean, we were getting like big reactions to what happened last night in Love Island. Like, it's almost to the point where we should do an item on it, but good to see it's getting the coverage it deserves. The
front of the London Times there, again, sex-obsessed Brits. Sex Life, the new TV obsession. I haven't got to what this is, but they're also talking about Roger Federer, who was humiliated at Wimbledon yesterday, and they used that word in the headlines, and I think that's the end of Federer, essentially. It might be the end of Federer full stop. I wouldn't be terribly surprised if this was the week where he goes.
Yeah, like it is incredible to see at long last a big sports story getting covered on the front page of a newspaper. So Roger Federer, I mean, he's obviously transcended that to be the big story this morning.
Yeah, and then tab of the morning to you, the Irish Daily Star. You have to say this in is it a Mayo accent? I don't know if you're allowed to these days. Lions Cape on touring.
It's the original Caelan Doris accent is what you need to which I assume
shots fired
to actually get that one going. But yeah, like, I mean, if it's not Federer, it is very much the Lions this morning. We're looking for a big sports story to talk
Shamrock
about.
Rovers, obviously, penalty save.
Well, yeah. If we're looking for a football story.
To keep them in it, of course, and we didn't get a Daily Telegraph this morning. The back page of the Telegraph, sports section, sorry, that was my favourite part. There's been a football tournament on, and they've had a little Volkswagen car dropping out to football. This was very controversial at the start of the tournament, apparently, but like...
What is it, a tournament for ants?
I kind of like it. I like who doesn't like a remote control car?
No, I love a remote control car. It's great to see the remote control car championships giving, I think it football that's on at the moment as well, giving that a bit of its time in the limelight.
Let's just go get on with it. It seems like the Sun sub-writers, I don't know, maybe they were otherwise engaged. And in the back of the Daily Mail this morning has a story, COVID outbreak sends Lions tour into chaos.
Yeah.
So that was it. I mean, is the show over? Are we done?
Like, I think that's pretty much it, isn't it? I mean, it's a big story coming from South Africa, and as sports journalists, I think it is our duty to talk about stories like that this morning, and to talk about Roger Federer, to talk about Love Island, and to talk about why we see faces and things. And other than that, I think that's pretty much our lot, isn't it?
OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward. They're new and improved. We'll see you tomorrow at around about 5:30. How do you feel, Eoin?
It's a national day of mourning, first of all. I think it's the only way to describe this. This was always going to come, this day. It's kind of like how you think about death, really. Today is that day where you're like, this is inevitable. 55 years that we thought might actually extend into maybe 65, 75, and maybe if you're lucky you could live a life where that drought would never end. But unfortunately, it's over. It's over, and so it's the end of a national pastime that we've all enjoyed for the entirety of our lives, and it's a pastime that involves many, many different things, whether it's laughing at Tim Henman crashing out in the semi-finals of yet another Wimbledon, whether it's the UK coming last in the Eurovision, it feeds into this pastime, whether it's what used to be England crashing out in a major football tournament at or before the semi-final stage. This is what sort of gave us joy, and it invaded all other areas of life. We got joy from seeing politicians shifting the face of one of their mates on CCTV. These are the sort of things that we used to get joy from and laugh at as a nation who looked at the nation and thought to ourselves, God, they should be doing a hell of a lot better than they are doing.
We need Charlie Hoy to address the nation. I wish to talk to you this evening about the state of the nation's affairs, and the picture I have to paint is not, unfortunately, a very cheerful one. Football is coming home. That's the problem. And you better prepare for the storm that is coming, because football is coming home, and there's nothing we can do about it. There is not a single thing that we can do to stop it now. And here's the thing. This team is brilliant. They are cresting to a peak over the next 4 years? Is it 6 years? Like, Raheem Sterling is still a very young man in football terms, and after 119 minutes last night was still able to drift past defenders at full pace. That guy's really good at football at international level. It's starting to click for those partnerships. They still have a load of young players to come into that. Like, what happens when Bellingham gets in the team and becomes a man as opposed to the man-child that he is at the moment? Football's coming home, and you and us better be ready for what's about to happen.
The end of an era. I just feel emptiness. It is as important a part of our sporting culture as supporting Ireland or supporting any other team that you might be invested in, is seeing this team underachieve and stumble where it probably should not stumble. And last night was that perfect banana skin, that last little moment of hope that would provide us with happiness at the end of a terrible 15, 16 months. But the hits just keep on coming.
Shane O'Reilly says, I just think you should do us all a solid and do a deep dive on Cluxton starting centre-back for his club last night for the 2 hours. Wasn't much else happening last night anyway. I mean, we'll get into the penalty at some point, but how do we get into that without seeming like we're petulant children giving out about the thing that everybody always goes out about? Oh, VAR didn't work. Oh, it's VAR. VAR's ruining football. Well, VAR has just ruined football.
Yeah, well, like...
It denied us a penalty shootout.
It did? Well, yeah,
it denied us Kasper Schmeichel versus Jordan Pickford. And Pickford wasn't very good last night.
No.
Like we said yesterday on the show, keep an eye on what Jordan Pickford's going to do, because he's prone to do anything.
I think one of the reasons why we can be petulant this morning is because Didi Hamann is allowing us to be petulant. But we saw somebody who wasn't Irish on television last night going two-footed on that decision, and we were like, it's okay to feel this. Other nationalities are also feeling this. Like, there was a brief moment when they were going through it on TV last night where I'd sort of got over it a little bit and I kind of started to laugh it off. But Hamann kept on going. And he kept on going and going and going, and I was like, oh, like
I didn't see it. Tell me what happened. What happened?
This guy's really, really personally offended by what's happened here. Just calling the decision a disgrace, and like, I mean, it seemed that Richie Sadler and Liam Brady didn't care about it to the level that Didi Hamann cared about it. The two Irish lads didn't care about it as much as the German lad cared about it so much, which I found funny. I was kind of afraid at one point that Hammam would look down the barrel of the camera and like address me and say, "Do I amuse you?" Like a funny how sort of thing, and like come out of the television and angrily attack me. But it was that level of intensity about England being rewarded with a really poor piece of refereeing, and it was a shocking decision. And it just kind of adds to the woes.
I mean, Flo Lloyd-Hughes came on the show yesterday and said it's basically been fixed for England to win this tournament. It's at home. They played all their games at home, apart from a couple. And they've got the easy side of the draw. And we were like, it's not literally, it hasn't literally happened. And then they get a penalty that isn't a penalty in extra time. With no time, really, for Denmark, who are completely shattered at that point, to come back into things.
Has there ever been a team as tired as Denmark? Like, I was watching the Tour de France yesterday and they went up Mont Ventoux twice in the one day, and those cyclists look less tired than the Danish footballers looked at the end of 100 minutes or so last night, or even before the full-time whistle in normal time went. They were completely shattered. They used their substitutes so early, and it was this really marvellous display of clinging on with their fingernails, and that should have been rewarded. I felt like they were going to get to half-time if that penalty wasn't given, half-time of extra time, I reckon, and then after that it's about another 5 minutes of hanging on before England maybe started to get tired themselves and maybe started to think, God, if we get caught in the counter, this would be a disaster, and all of a sudden we've got a penalty shootout where it's Schmeichel versus Pickford, and then you start to think maybe football gets prevented. It becomes 56 years rather than 55 years potentially, but that's it. You put a pin in it. And
are you ready for this team to win the World Cup?
Let's not do this.
I mean,
let's not.
You got to get ready. You've got to prepare for these things, Owen. They will bite you in the ass unless fail to prepare to fail.
Who knows where any of us will be next year? We can all go into hiding. As you mentioned there, people will be trying to get abroad from England, trying to improve their sex life next year. I'll be moving abroad to try and improve my sense of self because of England's possibility of winning that World Cup next year. We will not engage in that. I do think that there is this tone that, and it's probably just a self-comforting tone that existed on Twitter last night, where it's like, don't worry, Italy are going to beat them in the final. I'm just not sure they are. I'm just not sure they are. I just think that what we've seen over the last little while is this cresting towards England lifting a trophy, and this is how the story ends.
Yeah, I mean, the Telegraph were right to talk about the early booking that the BBC made to get Geoff Hurst on the sideline so that he can do sideline analysis as one of the few Englishmen who understand what it's like to play in a final. So well done to the BBC producers for booking that, and I'm sure the campaign is already underway on Twitter and whatever those other sites are that start those campaigns to have him hand over the trophy to Sir Harry Kane. Is it automatic? It is automatic. It will be Harry Kane, not Harry Maguire. Harry Maguire had that thing, so maybe he doesn't get to be a Sir for a while. Well, maybe if they clear that up, you know.
They all get Sirs, don't they?
They do. Yeah. Essentially, eventually, like Sir Raheem Sterling.
Sir Aaron Ramsdale is the one I'm most looking forward to. Like, that's going to be another moment as well. See, that's the problem here. It's not just a rip off a plaster moment with these sorts of things. I don't know.
It lasts forever, as we know. It lasts forever. Yeah.
And you would have thought that 66 was a much more recent event, given the glorification of it for so long. And even the glorification of the teams that were losers is something that's extraordinary as well, that we've all witnessed over the last 30 years or so. Now it just goes on to a whole other level if they win on Sunday in particular.
Okay. Who did you turn to in your hour of need last night? Who gave you the most amusement, Eoin, when it came to...
Listen, this is the one positive that we can take from England over the last 3 years. This was a theme of them in Russia in 2018, and it has, thankfully, mercifully, been a theme of 2021. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Ross Kemp, which we'll get to right now.
Well, I once said it means everything. Everything. Well, if I see Harry Kane lift that trophy on Sunday, it will mean everything, truly. But let's enjoy the next 24 hours, because my word, superb. Superb. Well done, Gareth. Well done, the team. Stay focused, believe, and I can't tell you what it means to me and millions of others because we've all been through a pretty hard time. Some of us a very hard time, not me, but I know people who have been through a very hard time and it means so much to them. Stay focused. Win on Sunday. You deserve it. You're the better team. Win.
Wow. They should play that a lot. It's on the big screen at Wembley just before kickoff.
You know that video that was doing the rounds of Liam Sheedy the other day, who was like, know your players. Like the carrot and the stick element, like roaring at one fella and saying it really politely to one other person, you can do it. That was Ross Kemp there. Win. You can also do it. I mean, I believe
I mean, can you imagine him on the sideline of the under-10s? How many of them would be left for under-11s? None, I'm saying. Not even his own kids would show up after, if that's the type of stuff that he gets up to on the sidelines.
There is more Ross Kemp on his own Twitter feed, of course, this morning. We could do a full show of Ross Kemp videos down through the years, but that probably sums up where he's at. And you know what? I'm happy for him and him only, and that's where my happiness ends this morning.
Yeah.
We're like this faux sort of, I'd be happy for them. Remember those days, like last week, when we were saying that? It's a nice thing to say within the confines of safety, where it's like, they're not going to win this thing. And I think it's easier to say that during a World Cup, where it's like there's way more teams in it. Well, not way more, 8 more teams in it. And there's more of a comfort blanket.
Well, soon there's going to be 20 more teams.
Well, yeah.
And then they'll copy that for the Euros as well. And then there'll be a Euros and a World Cup every year.
And like, I don't know.
And then this won't mean as much. Maybe we should actually have a World Cup and a Euros every year, essentially.
Maybe we should. Like, nothing, even the people throwing pints at each other in Croydon last night just didn't seem like their hearts were in it. They've been through this. They've already got to the stage where they're on top of the world and they know how to act in a more graceful manner. Not they're English, so they're still throwing pints at each other in a disgraceful and arrogant way, but they're doing it in a classier way than they were 3 years ago.
It's 7:47 this morning here on OTB AM. Here's what's coming up between now and 10 o'clock. We'd love to hear from you. 0879 180 180 if you can get your fingers to work this morning, or you can leave a comment on the YouTube channel, or of course you can always get us on Twitter @OffTheBall or @OffTheBallAM. Mitten Lipton is going to join us in just a moment. We're running through the sports pages properly at 8:05. Neil Treacy is going to talk to us about the rugby. There was a big rugby match last night. The Lions absolutely annihilated the Chelsea Sharks, and you can probably, maybe a lot of you didn't see any of that, or were probably listening to it before the match kicked off, but we'll give you a rundown on what happened. Going to talk Roger Federer, who absolutely was annihilated in the last set, potentially ever, of his Wimbledon career. Maybe he comes back as a tribute act, as a heritage act next season. Hard to know if that's going to happen. I'm going to talk about the football pod with Paddy and Andy, some brilliant insight. I don't agree with everything the lads were saying on this week's episode. We'll talk about that with Tommy at 8:50. Andy Mitten going to join us at 9:05. We've got your TV picks with Sue, and then some Lions reaction from last night coming up at 9:30 as well. We will be talking to Mitten Lipton in just a moment, but we've got some pictures from what was actually one of the biggest stories in Irish sport last night. So Stephen Cluxton, who is not playing with the Dubs at the moment, he has stepped away. He hasn't retired. They were the things that Desi said last night. And here he is playing number 6, a Division 3 league game for Parnell's last night.
John Small's replacement is what I'm seeing here. Get him outfield, get him in the team, get Comerford and Cluxton in the team. Can he fit them both in the team? It's like Matt Doherty and Seamus Coleman all over again. Actually, he looks in pretty good shape there. He looks like a man who's ready to answer his county's call.
I don't really understand what's happening. Like, a few scenarios. He hasn't made his mind up if he's ready to retire or not, or if he's taking a break this year or not. Probably in that instance, you think it's time to tell the management what your plans are, or go back in and train with the team if you do intend to play this year. Can they drop Evan Comerford now for somebody who hasn't been with the squad up until this point? In previous years, I mean, I don't know the date that he would have returned in previous years, but in previous years you would have expected him, you would have seen that he would have been around the squad for the league games, and so therefore there was always that month between the end of the league and the start of the championship where everything gets bedded back down. Paddy Andrews was making the point he's still the best goalkeeper So maybe you just pick the best players, and everybody in the squad understands that, and he has been given this extra time away. And I don't know, you try and tease out what the possibilities are, and is he working up to try and get back the desire to go through what he has to go through to win another All-Ireland for the Dubs? Like, the Meath game is, it's hurtling towards us at this point.
Like, am I right in saying Jack McCaffrey went back playing with Clontarf last year when he stepped away, or maybe even when he stepped away initially? Like, people tend to go and try and find that joy with the club, and maybe Cluxton's going through the exact same thing, but I'd agree that it is still extremely strange, and seeing him play for the club just kind of makes it stranger.
So why not just say, look, I'm gone for the year, so that there's clarity. And one possibility is that he has said this to the Dubs, and the Dubs are playing some kind of long game with us, so the rest of the country doesn't feel like, Stephen Cluxton's gone, let's go. But
it's quite defeatist, or it's quite not in keeping. Like, the Dubs shouldn't necessarily
I don't believe that's the case.
That.
I don't believe that's the case at all. Like, it's a theory, right? And I mean, until there's absolute clarity what's going on, like, is it fair to criticise Cluxton after everything he's done for not knowing what his mind is at this point? I mean, I can understand him not knowing what his mind is, but the knock-on impact on the team is that there's uncertainty. Now, Paddy Andrews did say on the podcast that the players are used to players coming and going, and there's no uncertainty because the next man up is like, well, it's my turn. And he didn't say that, but that was kind of the sense that you got from it. Like, Jim would come in, announce that such and such a player was taking a year out. I'd forgotten about Roy O'Carroll, so Roy O'Carroll stepped away, and like they worked around it. The difference with this is that Cluxton is so important in so many different ways, and it did seem as if, in terms of the kickouts, the way Paddy was talking, that he's the one who is coming up with everything that happens, that it's his giant football brain which is deciding, okay, this is what we're going to do when the opposition attacks us this way. That it wasn't some kind of master plan handed down and that they then implemented. It was coming from him, so.
That adds to it as well, the kind of importance that he would bring to the team right now, and that, like, once he steps away, I think there's an appreciable difference between Dublin with Cluxton and without him, and it is a setback for them. Like, for me, if I had to take a stab at what the exact scenario is, I think he might just be taking a break for this year and hasn't said if he's retired. But still, that is getting muddied in the message that is being given out there, because
so I'm gone for the season.
Yeah, that isn't the message that we're getting, or has been delivered publicly from Dublin. So is that the message that he's given? Maybe not. And if we were to take everything that's been said at face value, and like, why shouldn't we? Because, like, I mean, they've been asked about it clearly time after time after time. There is no, I don't buy there being a benefit in Dublin deliberately muddying the waters here. And I think that what Steve Farrell is essentially saying after last week is that Cluxton is muddying the waters, like that he's the one who hasn't come up with a final decision. He's the one who hasn't fully committed that he's not in, or he's not fully out.
Yeah, and I don't think it's wrong to ask him to be clear about that. If you're the management of the Dublin senior team, obviously you've got a relationship with an icon, and you need to manage that for his friends on the panel, for the people who respect him on the panel, and for the work that he's done. But the whole, like, he doesn't owe anybody anything, he doesn't have to tell anybody his own mind. You actually do. Isn't that the whole point about the team? Isn't that the whole point about leaving the jersey in a better place, is that you're not bigger than the jersey? You keep it safe for whoever's coming after you. But the bit where you're like 1 foot out and 1 foot in, I'm just not sure that that's in keeping with everything that we've seen from the Jim Gavin era, or certainly maybe that stuff that they talked about was less important than the reality of the scenarios where the best players could step out and could step back in because they needed them. And there are different rules for players who are at that absolute...
Like Connolly.
Exactly. And that was displayed. Like, he left and came back. They said, and in fairness to Des, he did say we've always had an open door policy, and Jim Gavin said we've always had an open door policy. That policy really only seemed to be open door for the very best players. Like, you know, squad players didn't seem to get the opportunity to opt out and then opt back in a little bit later in the year, but the players that they wanted and needed to win in All-Ireland, and that's, like, it's elite sport, so you understand why the rules get bent in those circumstances.
Yeah, like, I don't think anybody's critical of Cluxton maybe needing a break, or if he wanted to take a break. Like, that is...
Not at all. That's the opposite
difference there.
What we're saying, yeah.
And I think people are maybe taking it up like that. The issue is the communication that is allegedly being given, or that has been delivered to the Dublin camp, because that's what's being communicated then outside. Like, if people are saying that Dessie Farrell is trying to pull the wool over everybody's eyes, like, I don't think that reflects well on Dessie Farrell, and I think people need to understand that if that's what you're suggesting, you're actually kind of levelling something at Dessie Farrell there.
No, and again, to go back to the football pod with Paddy and Andy, Paddy Andrews says, you know, Dessie is a straight shooter, and that has been the case.
He has, in fairness. Like, I mean, and in fairness, so is Jim Gavin. Like, I mean, you would need to come prepared to a press conference or to a post-match conversation with Jim Gavin or to Dessie Farrell. You need to ask the right questions. Dessie Farrell's being asked very direct questions. Mick Galvin was being asked very direct questions over the last couple of months. Is Stephen Cluxton in the squad? And what they're getting back is a very unclear answer. So to me, Dessie Farrell is dealing with a very unclear situation himself, because otherwise, I just don't see the benefit in him deliberately doing that.
In retrospect, looking back at this week's power rankings, I feel like we did not reflect enough the stepping away / potential retirement of the most important player in Gaelic football history, which is how we have talked about Stephen Cluxton. So I just want to briefly revisit this. The greatest, most important, most influential footballer ever leaves a panel and it has no material impact on the power rankings. I think in retrospect, and I'm not starting an argument here, right? But in retrospect, I don't think we put enough store in this. Again, listen to the podcast, right? He was talking about the Tyrone game. Do you remember the first kick out of the Tyrone game? The Tyrone game where Tyrone were going to do this, and he just looked up and Heggs said over the entire press, and Dublin have won the game in the first minute. That first kick out, Dublin win the game. Like, it's game over. Tyrone crumbled psychologically in the face of that. I think it's important, Eoin. I think it's important that he's gone.
One counterpoint to that: they've gone through the league campaign without him, not looking good, not looking at their best, and they're still joint champions of the league. The heirs apparent couldn't beat them in Thurles. The heirs apparent need to beat them in Croke Park.
Yeah, but I don't know. I think Kerry in Thurles, Kerry in Croke Park, Kerry are better in Croke Park. Like,
so Dublin are way better in
Croke
Park.
They are, but I'm not. That is the league game. As we know, the last time they played in the championship, Cluxton again was a match winner and hugely important. Tommy Rooney is with us. Tommy, good morning to you.
Morning, lads. How you doing?
I think that we haven't made enough of a big deal. I think because it's slipping away piecemeal at the end here, that Cluxton not playing for Dublin this season, which now looks more likely than not, is a much bigger deal than we've actually read into.
Ger, the podcast for the Football Pod has gone up already, but you can't see my face during it. And during my face, the realisation dawns on me throughout that Meath have a chance now. Stephen Cluxton's gone. I'm only joking. Meath don't necessarily have a chance.
Well, hang on.
This is the opportunity.
Okay, but that's like what you're saying is what a lot of people feel because Cluxton is gone. There is an aura around the team that wins 6 in a row, that's going for 7 in a row, and a large portion of it comes from the identity of the goalkeeper and the public face that he has put forward. A large portion of it. Again, we don't know exactly. Maybe Fenton and Howard and McCarthy decide that this is the moment that they become. Certainly, McCarthy and Fenton become, even higher up that conversation for all-time greatest footballers, because they're right there in it, and they win All Ireland this year. And as Andy says in the clip, this is the greatest achievement. Is that the clip that we're about to play now? Or should I play that instead of paraphrasing him?
Yeah. No, let's play it, yeah. So it's Andy and Paddy. So Paddy kind of is talking about Dublin actually being in transition. I put it to him that Stephen Cluxton's All-Ireland medals are the 76th that have departed the Dublin dressing room in the last 18 months. I am including Kevin McMiniman in there because there was a report in the Irish News that he's now gone to Tokyo with the Irish boxing squad and he won't be back until mid-August. So 76 All-Ireland medals, Ger. Here's Paddy Andrews on episode 9 of the Football Pod.
So, like, transition can be lost and it kind of can be an excuse for certain teams or in other sports and say, they're in transition, give them time. Dublin aren't looking for time. Dessie Farrell's not looking for time. The young players aren't looking for time. They're looking to win the All-Ireland again. So that won't be an excuse. But if you look at the player turnover, of course, like you say, maybe 76 All-Ireland medals, that's a hell of a lot. But they're still going to expect and to win the All Ireland this year. That's going to be the goal.
I think if Desi manages to win the All Ireland this year, I think it's some achievement. I have to say, I think they're going to be there with McCarthy, Con, Kilkenny, Scully, these guys, Cooper.
Fenton.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like, that talent is still amazing. But the Jack McCaffrey thing now and Paul Mannion thing becomes big because Cluxton is gone. It becomes a bigger issue now that they're gone. Because Evan, however good he is, Evan Comerford isn't going to be as influential as Stephen Cluxton, in my opinion. Okay? If Johnny Cooper hasn't played much football this year, McMahon is good, but he's not as good as Johnny Cooper, in my opinion. McDade did exceptionally well last year, was never pressed. He cannot do what Jack McCaffrey did in 2019. So
he's also injured.
He's also injured. But my point is, Lahith and Byrne and these guys are good players. But they were replacing other players with Scully, O'Callaghan, Kilkenny. Now, if the opposition can't smell blood this year, if they can't smell, we're as well pack it in, because there is, all of a sudden, there is a chance. I know it's not even the loss of Stephen Cluxton as much, in my opinion. It's what that, I suppose, you start thinking then, okay, they have lost the book on the screen, but they have lost.
I might even put in this category.
No, I know. I understand, but like, Paddy, like you coming off the bench with Kevin McMenamin and these guys, you always had to come up with a plan. When Macaulay came off the bench in midfield, like, that was you had to have a different plan. We didn't have a plan. We didn't have a plan for Howard. Do you know what I'm saying? They were big players. Proved it last year. Really good player, and I know he's injured now. But when Jack McCaffrey was playing, you literally had to put a player, American Jack McCaffrey. And that is just huge. And now with Stephen Cluxton, Eva Comerford, even if Comerford's kickouts are as good as Cluxton's, every team is taking a step forward there. They're taking a step forward.
That's a good point. I really like that closing point, actually, Tommy. I think that teams might actually enter into engagement with Dublin with less paranoia, quite frankly. And like, that comes down to McCaffrey as well. He's bang on there about having to man-mark him. Like, people do weird things against great players. Kerry put Gavin White on McCaffrey in the 19 drawn final, and it was a complete disaster. That's just one tiny example. Mayo have done a number of different things like that to try and quell the influence of whether it's Diarmuid Connolly or Kieran Kilkenny down through the years. Kilkenny obviously still there, and maybe there are a number of those Kilkennys that exist in that team where you still have to have a special array of options to try and mute that threat, and maybe that still makes teams paranoid. But maybe just the fewer threats means that teams can play their own game a little bit more, and we end up seeing a greater volume of contests that Dublin actually have to engage in throughout the season, rather than maybe 1 or 2 games in a year. And I think that comes full circle back to Sunday week, which I think is now a really important moment in the lifespan of this Dublin team, because if they beat Meath like they beat them last year, I actually think that goes a long way to answering a lot of the questions.
100%. And when you think back on that Leinster final last year, one of the moments that stands out is that Con O'Callaghan goal that comes from the Cluxton kick-out. Like, it's such a simple move. It looked like a training ground move. And Dublin just completely broke Meath with that. In that moment, you had 3 or 4 players following the wrong men. Con O'Callaghan gets in loads of space, and it leads to the rock goal. I went back and watched the 2019 league match that Comerford played, because he was under a bit of pressure that day, and I don't know whether that was a waste of my own time, but like, Kerry got 1-4 direct off Evan Comerford that night. I know that he's probably grown since then, and he's had time with Stephen Cluxton to learn his trade, but it has to mean something, Eoin. It has to mean something when that amount of players are gone. They don't have that aura on the bench anymore. Paddy Andrews was talking a couple of weeks ago about the severity of their A versus B games and the strength and depth. They've been all the conversations we've been having over the last number of weeks. But like, if Dean Rock wasn't coming off the bench at the weekend for Dublin against Wexford, like, who were their other clutch players to come off the bench? I know he wasn't necessarily needed, but like, who else is there to come on if Cormac Costello isn't having a great day? Like, Robbie McDade is now gone. He's now injured. I'd be interested to see who's going to line out at 6 and 7 against Meath. Obviously, they can slip in McCarthy. They've brought in the Hiff, Padder Coffey Byrne. But those 2 boys aren't proven yet.
They're learning on the job, yeah.
They're learning on the job. And like, as Andy said, if teams can't smell blood, if they can't smell blood, we may as well give up.
I agree. I actually totally agree that this will be a desperate reflection on the rest of the championship if a greater effort against Dublin isn't put up this year. If something closer, and that's not like that. That's nothing against the Dubs. It is against everyone else. Everyone else now needs to up their game. This narrative that sometimes is out there, being like, stop criticising the Dubs. Everybody else needs to take some responsibility. I think that is doubly true this year. Everybody else needs to take that responsibility.
Are we falling into our annual trap of trying to talk ourselves into something, or is all the evidence there? Is the 700 medals that you've talked about disappearing from the panel, is that important, more important than in previous years? It's
like, it doesn't sound like a believable number. Like it's an outrageous amount, and it's like the lads talked about it as well on the podcast, how Jack McCaffrey and Paul Mannion stepping away now is so much bigger.
Well,
it's so much bigger because they got away with it,
and they're in the peak of their career. And like, you know, it's a footballer of the year. Did Mannion ever make footballer of the year? Was he on a short list? He was certainly. You wouldn't have been terribly surprised if he had been on a short list a couple of times.
And 19, and like that's the key thing. It was at the end. He leaves at his peak, I would argue. Because that 2019 season he had was absolutely unreal. That night when he was kicking points from the sideline against Mayo. Not really the sideline, so you're not allowed to shoot from there.
Just while you were chatting there, I've looked up the semi-final against Tyrone in 2017, and Tyrone started the game really well, very aggressive. Everybody's up. Everybody knows exactly what it is. And it's a brilliant team they have. Sean Kavanagh kicks the first free from inside the 21 after there was a beautiful through ball, and a Dublin scramble defence gets back and prevents it from being through on goals. And then Cluxton put the ball down and finds Scully on essentially not the other midfield line in the Tyrone half, essentially. That's where the kick out lands. And it goes straight to Scully, and the whole Tyrone press is beaten, and the game finishes 2-17 to 11 points. But I think that's the minute. That one instance is so important because all of Tyrone's plans are, we're going to get in his face, this is going to be great, we're going to have the numbers written, and it's like, no, I don't care. I've seen this movie, and I know where Scully is, and I know that in the 4.5 seconds it takes the ball to travel this amount of time, he's going to be arriving at that spot, and he essentially catches it uncontested, and it's game over because he's got that ability to do it. Who was it saying that they don't think that Dublin work that much on kick-outs? It's all in Cluxton's mind, where he says, you be at this point and I'll find you.
Kyle Coney was saying that this week.
Yeah.
Coney was saying it, but like,
I mean, obviously they work for hours and hours and hours and hours on the kick-out, which gives them that ability on the day to call plays from a playbook which is like really dense, except almost notional.
There's been a quote attributed to Evan Comfort from DCU this week that he used to tell his teammates, just move and I'll find you. So that would be in keeping with the Stephen Cluxton way of thinking. But the lads went in depth on the fact that it wasn't that Cluxton was infallible. He was fallible. He'd make mistakes. Andy spoke about freaking him out in 2015 in the All-Ireland semi-finals. It was just that he figured everything out. Whatever you put in front of him, Cluxton found a way of figuring it out. And Dublin obviously had the players in the field to do it that day. Like, one of the big things from it the weekend, like Brian Howard stepping up was massive, because I don't think Howard has stepped up ever since Jim McConnelly said, keep an eye on this guy a couple of years ago. He's had moments. He's had days when he looks like he could be one of the best footballers in the country. But last year, I think it was a massive blow that Brian Howard didn't do enough to start for Dublin. That massive blow. What am I talking about? They won the All-Ireland. But like, they need Brian Howard to step up. They need the likes of Sean Bugler to really take a grasp of his team now. Like, obviously Conn, Kilkenny, Fenton, McCarthy, they're all going to do that, no problem. But I would argue that they need Brian Howard and they need Bugler and Scully to keep their hold on this team at the minute.
Okay, so what's the Dublin Meath score going to be?
Oh, Jesus. I'm not falling into that trap again. I'll give me another 4 days. Give me 4 more days.
We should do it a daily thing, a daily update on what you think the scoreline is, because this will be a fluctuating thing.
Yeah, I don't know.
Come on, give me a spread of 12 points. 12-point spread. No way.
They'll cover that, Tommy, will they?
Surely Meath are going to score a goal, lads. Like, they have to score a goal. Like, Killian O'Sullivan was very close last year to ripping the back of the net in the first 2 minutes. Like, if they score a goal and we get 20 minutes out of it, I don't even care about half-time, because we kept the Dubs to 4 points 2 years ago at half-time. We just hadn't scored ourselves. So.
We're getting sucked into the emotion and the psychodrama, but Dublin are 50-1 on to beat Meath. They will
definitely beat Meath. And
I think
we know the odds compilers. They're cold, rational people, and they're looking at this going, yeah, but look at the Dublin team still.
Yeah, exactly. Like, look at the players we've named there: Con, Kilkenny, Fenton, Howard, Bugler, Scully. Not even touching on the defenders there.
Okay.
Like,
all right.
And they were really good defensively. They were really good defensively against Wexford. I know they were sloppy. I know that they made mistakes going forward, and Howard and McCarthy were putting the ball over the line, and Costello picked the ball off the ground and missed frees.
Okay.
But defensively, they restricted Wexford to very little.
Okay. All right. Tommy, good stuff. The podcast is available now. Yep.
It is indeed, yeah.
Okay, good stuff. That's the
the
bit where
OTB
that's the bit where you give us the hard sell.
Other podcast. Oh yeah, it's in the OTB Sports app. It's
practiced.
It's in wherever you get your podcast.
Great chemistry.
You can get it in the OTB GA stream itself, where you get all of the interviews, and you can also get it in its own podcast channel.
Subscribe, rate, like, share. Thanks very much. That's Tommy Rooney, one of the 3 stars. I've noticed the artwork is like the 3 lads in action. You know, Andy Moore, Footballer of the Year, 25-time All-Ireland winner, Paddy Andrews, and Tommy in action. I mean, that was. I don't want to say his ego has exploded, but like.
When you get fan art after one episode, you know you're doing something right.
The way you said that there, it sounded a bit different. 11 minutes past 8 on OTB AM. If you want to get in touch, we'd love to hear from you. When was the last time Italy beat England at anything, says environmentalist. Somebody is suggesting that... when was the last time England beat Italy at anything but rugby? And somebody saying athletics, triathlon, cycling, boxing, etc. But I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. If anybody wants to get in touch with us, we'd love to hear from you this morning. How many World Cups and Euro Cups have Italy won again? Yeah, it's going home all right, says Declan Bow. But Declan, you just need to prepare yourself. That's not how this works. You can't bring rational thinking into what's going on right now. You must prepare yourself for the worst, because then if it doesn't happen, if it doesn't happen, just think. But we can't think like that. We can't allow ourselves to think like that. We're going to speak with Neil Treacy in a moment about the Lions yesterday, because we know none of you were watching it. We know you were all watching the rugby or the football last night. So a reminder, OTB AM brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. We're going to take a quick break. Back after these.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Nah, not those Lions. 3 Lions we can get behind.
And he hoofed it. There's more pressure being ratcheted up with a loss like that, of course. Just getting the head boxed off you, that just kind of happened.
For all your Lions coverage this summer, download the OTB Sports app.
Sean, what's that thing going round the garden?
That is our new Husqvarna auto mower.
Auto mower?
Yeah, it's a robotic lawnmower from Husqvarna. Cuts the grass automatically, has GPS tracking and an app. Even works in the rain. I just thought, why spend time cutting grass when I could spend it with the family?
Great! You can put the dinner on, so...
No can do, love. Have to paint the man cave.
Husqvarna auto mower. Never mow again. Learn more at husqvarna.ie.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
13 minutes past 8. Neil Treacy is with us. Neil, good evening, good morning to you. How are you? Bit lost in time here, lads. Sorry about that. How are you getting on?
Not too bad, no. Not too bad.
You managed to ignore the football largely last night because you were working on the rugby.
Well, luckily enough, we actually did have a screen in our commentary box that was showing the England-Denmark game. So I was glancing my eye upwards towards it every few minutes just to check and see on a score and give out a little update. But yeah, to be honest, I pretty much missed all of it. I can't say I have any real understanding of how that game went last night. I cost the last 10 minutes of extra time, I'd say, following my flight home from Johannesburg.
Very good, yeah. Hope you took all the requisite COVID precautions.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Do you think anybody out there thinks you were actually in Johannesburg last night, and we need to clarify that for them? Is that something that we need to do?
I certainly do. What's going on here?
Modern life is rubbish.
What's this private joke that I've stumbled upon?
Episode 432. Let's talk about the actual game itself. We can talk about the drama around it in a moment. With the late kickoff and the amount of players who were isolating, the team got changed. These midweek team selections in the past have tended not to be great for your chances to make the test team. That doesn't seem to hold true this time?
Yeah, I'd probably go along with that. as like you kind of said at the start, you know, and also as well these midweek games and the opposition they're facing this time around, they are completely depleted because you look at the Springbok squad, they've got a training squad of, you know, almost 45 players. So the Sharks alone were losing 9 of their squad in normal circumstances in tours gone by. You know, a few of those players might have been released back to their clubs for the actual games themselves, so they're able to kind of, you know, bulk up their squad a little bit. But it's not the situation at the moment. We saw with the Lions the other night, the Sigma Lions, that they were quite weak. The Sharks last night were picked from a pretty weak side as well, although it was a fairly settled team that they'd been able to kind of use over the course of the Currie Cup in the opening rounds of that. But in fairness, when you look at the disruption to the British and Irish Lions team, that there had been 4 players taken out of the back line, the starting back line to begin with, another 4 players taken out of the subs bench. They had 1 available back to go into the subs as well. So they're like 7 forward substitutes. I thought they did really, really well. And for someone like Josh Adams, who was coming in for his 3rd start in, 10 days, like, I know players always say that a Lions tour probably takes a lot more out of you, and you're being asked questions you're not going to be asked on your regular club duty or on a regular international tour. But to be starting 3 matches over the course of a week and to come away with it with 8 tries is a pretty serious feat. And I think when you look at what Josh Adams and Eoin van der Merwe have done over the course of these few games, 12 tries between the two of them, I'd say, like, look at Anthony Watson and Liam Williams. Touch wood, they're obviously all right, and you know that they don't. You know, we aren't certain yet were they one of the close contacts or were they a positive case. So obviously you want all of them to be fine first and foremost. But I'd say they were probably sitting down watching that on TV last night, having meant to have been starting the game, and seeing Eoin van der Merwe and Josh Adams running in 6 tries in their place, and thinking, "Ooh, we might have a job here making a test team."
Eoin van der Merwe scoring a hat-trick while maintaining perfect hair must be a first for any Lions tour, I think. Then what is the story with this Saturday's game then, Neil? Like, is that going to be pushed back to, like, right before the test if it doesn't happen this Saturday? And what sort of knock-on impact would that have for the reasons you're talking about there, like players maybe being a little bit shattered going into the first test?
Yeah, to be honest, Eoin, we actually don't know is the honest answer, which is a strange thing to be saying on the Thursday morning before a game would potentially be going ahead. The communication from the Lions has been that they are working with South Africa Rugby, trying to source new opponents for the match. What they're hoping to do first, basically, is to have a replacement opponent put in for the game this Saturday, and they just ultimately won't end up taking on the Bulls over the rest of the tour. The other option then is that the game against the Bulls gets rescheduled into probably the week leading up to the first test, or even the week leading up to the second test. It's probably not ideal. I think they probably want to have the game on the Saturday and free up those weekends. But yeah, that is the honest answer. We do not know what the situation around this game is.
Because it's all well and good having Adams running in tries while maybe being a little bit tired against the South Sea Sharks, but doing it against the Springboks is an entirely different matter. And I do wonder, is there a school of thought out there that maybe the Springboks losing a game or two here, I know they need to get back up to match fitness, but that the other way of looking at it is that they'll be completely rested and ready for this?
Yeah, what I could see happening, to be honest, is the game against South Africa A next week. I could see, given that they've now had their game against Georgia cancelled, I could absolutely see it that Jacques Nienaber and Rassie Erasmus decides to throw in some of the frontline South African players that didn't get a run against Georgia the first time out, because you know they were still involved with club duty and coming back, and you know they were late linking up with the squad. Maybe someone like Cheslin Colby. I could see him giving a few more experience and a few more high-profile players a run in that South Africa A game, just to get them a little bit more up to speed.
That would make sense, wouldn't it? And the other thing, obviously, you mentioned the Georgia game going there. How undercooked will the Springboks test team be by the time the first test rolls around? Because it's only a couple of weeks away. Yeah,
like, to be totally honest, I kind of think they might be a little bit undercooked. I watched the first half of the game they were playing against Georgia on Friday night, and to be honest, they weren't really good for much of it. I know by the second half, Georgia really faded and South Africa pulled away completely, and it was kind of similar enough to the way the Lions games had developed, where by the end it was, there was a kind of a training session element to it and the intensity had gone out of it. But I certainly thought for the first 40 minutes anyway that South Africa looked very, very rusty. Now, they weren't at 100% full strength. There were still a lot of players to come into the team, but they had a good few frontliners. I thought their scrum in the opening 35, 40 minutes really, really creaked. And it was ultimately injury that forced him to bring on Franz Malherbe at tight head, and that actually shored up the scrum quite a bit. But I do think they would absolutely be worried about being undercooked coming into the Test series. And I certainly would.
Is there any fix for that from a South African perspective? Like, apart from putting those players out in the warm-up matches, that doesn't really help with your combinations. That doesn't really help with the sense that this team is a team that hasn't played, apart from that Georgia game, for a long time together.
No, and even putting the players out into the warm-up games, back with their, a team like the Stormers or with the Bulls, if and when the Lions play the Bulls or whoever they're going to be playing, even if you're putting those players back out, the whole point of them being in with South Africa now is that they're in the bubble and they're not leaving that bubble. And,
of course, yeah.
It's the COVID situation on top of it as well. I would say by choice, if it was in normal circumstances, they would be releasing some players back to those teams to play. But obviously they want to keep everyone in a tight little bunch. Like the Sharks, for example, they played their last Currie Cup game about 10 days ago and immediately came up to Johannesburg. They're based the other side of the country, down in Natal or down in Durban. And they came up to Johannesburg in their bubble for 8 days prior to that game just to play the Lions. So there's a huge amount of logistics that have to go into actually organising the games then as well on top of it. Okay, and the notion that the Lions might move everything to Cape Town from this point forward, they've essentially been in Johannesburg, is that right, up to this point? They have, yeah. They've been in Johannesburg up to this point. They're due to go up to, I'm sorry, I'm just looking at my wall chart here that's directly behind me. The world spins up, down, it doesn't really matter. That's what I'm cheating with, yeah. But no, they're going to Pretoria next for what they hope is going to be a game this Saturday, where they were due to be playing the Bulls. After that, they're down to Cape Town for another couple of games and the first test, and then back up to Johannesburg then for the second and third tests. But yeah, the option to move everything to Cape Town is obviously still on the table. I suppose they're probably through the toughest section of it with these opening games in Johannesburg, and I'd say once they get down to Cape Town for a few matches, they'll start to feel a little bit better, and they can potentially look at then where are the remaining two tests going to be played. Okay. The fact that the Lions have COVID in the camp and the isolation is happening, obviously that throws their preparations into disarray. So it seems like it's a bit spurious for us to be speculating about who might be in the test team at this point from the Lions' perspective as well. Yeah, I certainly think so. Because I think it's a little bit unfair on some players now, where the likes of, as I mentioned, Anthony Watson and Liam Williams were hoping to get their second run out yesterday evening, whereas Josh Adams is someone like Josh Adams, Bundy Aki, Ian Henderson. They've now played all 3 games. Josh Adams starting all 3 games. So I think our selections and our opinions on some players might be a little skewed just based on the minutes we've seen out of them. If we were to pick up players that played well last night, I thought Owen Farrell had a very, very good game and probably needed a good game as well. I thought his distribution was excellent. He played a couple of lovely little grubber kicks down into the corner and just varied the kicking a little bit. Playing a 10? Playing a 10, yeah. I always prefer him a 10, to be totally honest. Yeah. He's just involved in the game more. He can influence it more. And I think if you're playing at 12, there's just a huge reliance on his defence, and I think you're missing out a little bit. But I thought his kicking into the corner was excellent yesterday, just these lovely little grubber kicks that was bringing Van der Merwe and Lewis Rees-Zammit into play and just linking up with the other players as well. Ian Henderson was an excellent game, I thought, captaining the side. I'd say it was a very, very difficult occasion for him yesterday, but you could see he was flying out of the line in defence, making some big hits, and was contributing to a number of choke tackles. Bundy Aki was probably a little bit quiet on the ball, didn't get the involvement he probably wanted. They were kicking a good bit, trying to just link up and bring the back 3 into the game. So Bundy Aki probably had a relatively quiet game. It goes without saying, Josh Adams and Duan van der Merwe were excellent, and it harks back. There was one moment, I think it was Josh Adams' second try of the match, harks back to something Keith Wood had been saying on the lads at Monday Night Rugby on Monday about how as good as a finisher Josh Adams is, that it's the work rate and it's the sheer energy and constant willingness to be involved that is setting him apart at the moment. And you could see that with, I think it was his second try in the second half of the game, where the ball was a little bit messy coming out of a ruck and he manages to get a leg to it and fly hacks it and he chases it down and it's still bobbling around there on the try line. It was an incredibly messy try, but he was the one there just about managing to wriggle his foot in around it and get the ball onto it and would not give up until eventually it broke out the right side for him and he was able to touch it down. So he's just absolutely coasted away in terms of the back three options at the moment. 8 tries in 3 games, just a pretty staggering return.
Okay, the Lions are slight favourites to win this Test series at the moment. Not a huge amount separating them really when it comes to how the bookmakers think this is going to go. Is that about right, because they are playing games as a team together, while at the same time they're up against the world champions at home? You kind of feel like, South Africa really, really look forward to physically beating the crap out of the Lions. They think it's like a super bonus opportunity to get all of the 4 nations together and batter them.
Yeah, I would probably go along with that line and thinking that the Lions are probably favourites at the moment, particularly if South Africa don't get a second game under their belt. There've been a lot of aspects to the Lions' play that is really, really impressive. Defensively, they've been excellent in these opening matches. I think particularly last night there were a good few stages of the game where they had to readjust and found themselves kind of camped on their line for various for periods of time. And I thought they did really, really well in all of those occasions where they just soaked up the pressure. They went through their phase. There were a lot of multi-man tackles where 2-3 players were committing to the tackle. Someone cutting him down low, someone cutting him up a little bit higher and holding up play, slowing things down, and eventually just working their way towards an opening for someone, whether it was Tom Curry, whether it was Luke Cowan-Dickey last night. There were plenty of players doing it. Sam Simmons getting in over the ball and winning a turnover right on the try line. They did that 2 or 3 times against the Sharks last night. They did it similarly as well against the Lions on the Saturday previous. So I think that was one thing that jumped out as a huge positive in their style of play, just their ability to soak up the pressure when they are under the cosh a little bit in their own territory. That is something I'd say that Warren Gatland and Steve Tandy, who's assigned the defence, is going to be really, really happy about.
All right, Neil, good stuff. Thanks a million for that. Cheers. 8:28 this morning. A reminder, of course, that we are broadcasting every match from the British and Irish Lions tour of South Africa on Off the Ball. The next match at the moment as it stands is next Wednesday, the 14th of July, South Africa A versus the British and Irish Lions. There is probably a good chance that the game gets refixed on Saturday, that the Lions play somebody else other than the team that they were supposed to be playing. We'll wait and expect an announcement around noon today. On that, we will bring you that news as soon as we get it. Our coverage is brought to you in association with Vodafone, lead partner of the British and Irish Lions. Going to run you through the newspaper headlines while we wait for Colm Boohig, who's going to talk to us about the tennis. England make their fans proud in a different way. They're one step closer. Picture of Casper Schmeichel and Gareth Southgate embracing there. Player ratings: Van der Merwe, Adams on fire as exciting loose trio failed to shine. Lions shake off COVID disruptions to take Sharks to school. Roy Keane's late nights with brilliant Gareth Southgate. Of course, Keane famously stamped on Southgate. Does everybody remember that? Yeah, that's a thing. And then they became mates. Gary Neville issues rallying cry to England players ahead of semi-final. The other Roy Keane story that's doing the rounds is him just telling everybody about the massive row that he had with some poor woman at a Neil Diamond concert. She was singing Sweet Caroline too loud at the concert in the open air, and Roy decided this was not the done thing at a concert. Clearly not a regular concert goer, or certainly not somebody who gets into the spirit of a concert. Roy, he was giving out to her, and he told this story about himself on ITV, which suggests that there is a comic genius at work in there somewhere.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's like I don't have ITV, and I feel like I'm kind of on the outside looking in at a lot of this good content that's occurred during the Euros. I'm
sure you could sort it out somewhere. The front cover of the Daily Telegraph, a pyramid of flesh. That's the England players celebrating there. The pyramid's about the only thing that they didn't steal when they were a colonial empire, probably because they couldn't fit it in their satchels. But anyway, the Pyramid of Flesh there is England celebrating. Who's on the ground? It's Harry Kane after knocking it in, is it? Or is it at the end of the game? I don't know. It's one of those moments of celebrations for them anyway. There is good stuff on Twitter about the goal. I mean, we obviously are a little bit reticent to be too shocked and surprised about the fact that the goal was allowed. But imagine if you're Denmark this morning. You're feeling like can we be Team 33? Right? You are. Ball on the pitch, right? There's a second ball on the pitch when the run is made by Raheem Sterling. So obviously the game should stop. And it's not like there's a ball on the pitch miles away. Sterling dribbled the ball past the other ball to get into the situation, into the penalty area. Or is it Sterling who does that? No, it is Sterling.
Yeah, because then he gets goal side of his defender and then it's curtains.
Yeah, and the defender's like, which of these balls am I supposed to be getting off you here, Raheem?
Is he thinking that?
Well, I mean, that's what I would be claiming in court when I'm saying, I'm sorry, we need a replay here. Or at least a penalty shootout. Then there's the dive for the penalty, which is egregious. Like, it's fairly clear cut that he's going down and then gets knocked. But he's already dived, which means that's foul play. Simulation is foul play. So he commits a foul and it should be a free kick out. And then, I don't know, is this true? Have you seen this? There was a laser shined in Schmeichel's face?
Yeah.
Is it real?
Yeah. Well, I've seen the video, or unless it's a really, really good video edit. I'm pretty sure that is true, but I guess he makes the penalty save anyway. I'm not sure there's a laser to blame for him letting go of the ball or parrying it back towards Harry Kane. But Schmeichel, that's almost one of the more galling aspects of it. You've got an absolutely wonderful goalkeeper who tries to do a little bit too much with the save. All he needs to do is parry it wide, and there's just enough lack of power on the effort from Kane for him to think that he can actually smother the thing, and he kind of half goes to smother it, half goes to parry it, and all of a sudden he's just parried it right back into the path of Kane. And I think that's the one controllable they might have got right after Schmeichel had a brilliant game, let's not forget. But the refereeing decision is a disgrace, especially given the context of the referees being really good at this tournament and then getting really good help at this tournament. VAR working brilliantly, or certainly way better than we've seen in the Premier League. Have the sideline televisions just disappeared? That would have been the perfect incident for them to say, listen, go and have a look at this for yourself, because you might have seen contact, but really what we're seeing here, there is minimal contact, if any. And certainly watching it on television, there is no contact before he goes down. There is contact as he is falling down, but it's minimal. And yeah, Raheem Sterling is playing to get the penalty, as all attackers will do, and he's got the benefit of the doubt initially. But VAR is supposed to be there to
fix it.
And I don't know how they got that wrong. It's a terrible, terrible decision.
Our producer is currently waging a war on Twitter with our show. I don't know if you're aware of the latest developments. So no. Tommy Rooney came on a little bit earlier on
and said they're going to beat Dublin.
Yeah, essentially. And then we tweeted that, and now he's like, "Hey, here, take this down. I'm seeking legal advice about the fact that you're tweeting my actual words, my actual words." So I'm telling you, the Desi will be virtually pinning that to the dressing room wall. Do they put it up on a PowerPoint now? Is that it? That's how that works?
Yeah.
It cycles through, or there's video screens, big touch video screens.
And they've got Pierce Brosnan doing something bad as James Bond, and they've got a whole other range of terrible Mead things.
What would the motivational video be? Just Martin O'Connell?
It'd just
him and the ghosts of that great team that sends shivers down the spine of all the Dubs.
Yeah, I think that's basically it. I think it'll be them screwing over Louth in 2010. Another terrible Meath events.
It wasn't just our dreams that died yesterday, it was potentially the career of Roger Federer. So maybe none of you got the opportunity to see this. You were otherwise occupied. Colm Boohig is with us, though, to put a cap on the most magnificent of the tennis careers. It may not end up being the winningest, but certainly it has been the most thrilling. It was the one that inspired grown men to write bad poetry. Colm, that was the end.
It was kind of Federer to make room for the England-Denmark match. That was about the only positive I was grasping to yesterday. It was sad. It was sad to watch. It was kind of like Muhammad Ali towards the end against Larry Holmes or Trevor Berbick. It was watching a great, getting embarrassed. And that's what it was in the third set when he lost 6-love. The only other time he's lost 6-love in the entire century was the 2008 French Open final against Rafael Nadal, when he also lost the third set, 6-love. That was just weeks before the pair engaged in probably the greatest tennis match ever. And the only other time he's lost 6-love on grass was the previous century, the 1999 Queen's Tournament, which Kathleen McNamee tweeted about yesterday. Thought it was a great stat, and it encapsulated just how amazing and mercurial and effervescent and every lovely adjective you want to describe Federer is on grass. But yesterday he was beaten by the far superior man, and Hubert Hurkacz, as solid as he is, as ruthless as he can be, should never be beating Federer like that. But, you know, Federer is a few weeks shy of his 40th birthday. Age has caught up with him.
Is there a possibility that the injuries clear up and he gets strength back at some point this year, next year, and that this isn't the end? I mean, you know, you think about the stats came up for Jimmy Connor's number of wins at Wimbledon, and they were ridiculous. But then you remember that he did go on to his 40s and would come back and would just keep playing and have the crack and, like, be a bit of a heritage act, like, kind of, you know, you two are still banging out those massive 100 million, 500 million concert tours, play the arena, come, do your thing, get beaten in the quarterfinals by somebody. Is that Federer's future? Or, as McEnroe was saying, nah, he cannot make peace with the fact that he's not going to be the winner?
No, I think Federer is only interested in the Joshua tree. I don't think he wants to be touring in his middle age. Like, I think he's different to Andy Murray, because Murray won the first 2 rounds at this year's Wimbledon. And after his first round victory over Basilashvili, he was saying on his on-court post-match interview, because they're starting to do that now in centre court after every match with the winner, which is actually a great addition. He was saying to the crowd, like, I don't know why you all want me to retire so much. I want to keep on playing. I love the sport. To raucous applause. I think Federer just wants to win. If he can't win the tournament, I don't think he's that interested in playing. I think that making the quarter-final in his 5th tournament back after a 14-month layoff is very impressive. And actually the pre-tournament predictions were that he would get knocked out in the quarter-final, but he wasn't supposed to be playing Hubert Hurkacz. He should have been playing world number 2 and second seed Daniil Medvedev, but Hurkacz beat him in the 4th round. And I think if he had lost to Medvedev, it would be more palatable. But even if it was peak Djokovic, losing 6-love is such a cruel way to go. And it wasn't like it was a 6-love like it was at last year's French Open final between Djokovic and Nadal, when Nadal took the first set in that scoreline, when Djokovic got the juice and advantage a lot. Hurkacz destroyed Federer in less than half an hour. But look, you're right to think about alternative positives. The first set, okay, it wasn't that close. Hurkacz in no time went up 5-2. But Federer got back into it. It was a kind of a respectable scoreline. The second set, Federer went 3-love up. He got a break at the start of that set, and that went to a tie-break. And at 2-3 in the tie-break, Federer had a 1 in a million slip right at the net, an open goal equivalent volley to an open court, and he slipped. And Hurkacz went 4-2 up, got the mini break, and took the set away.
And then he collapsed.
The third set is the collapse. And the third set caused that John McEnroe quote, which just struck me. I mean, it was so simple, and it was, you know, a very basic encapsulation of what happened. But just the way that McEnroe said, I can't believe that just happened. Pause. As quickly as it did. And Federer was bending down and picking up his bags and made a very rapid exit. And in the post-match press conference, you know, he didn't deny the fact that, yeah, this could well be his last time playing on centre court, but to end it in 6-love after winning the tournament 8 times, it's cruel.
I tweeted that it reminded me of the scene in the boat in The Sopranos where Bobby Bacala is sitting there with Tony Soprano asking, you know, what's it like when you die? And Bobby says at the end, you probably don't hear anything, everything just goes black. That 6-love was it, Wimbledon fading to black for Roger Federer, and us all kind of sitting there shocked for a few minutes, wondering if the TV was working. Emma was saying she turned it off, she couldn't watch.
Oh, really? Yeah.
I mean, I think a lot of tennis fans were like that.
Yeah.
So you're right to bring up the slip, and there's this amazing slow-mo of the crowd's face. Somebody screams while the ball is in the air, despite the fact the umpire has, I think in the previous break, said, would you all shut up? Stop screaming in the middle of the points, essentially, except in his polite British way. I'm not sure he's British, but you get my sense. And then the slip is so egregious, but there's a brilliant slow-mo of just the crowd, which is obviously how Alfred Hitchcock filmed tennis brilliantly in his movies. And it was Hitchcockian. It was like this tapestry of faces, but the horror on their faces as what they're watching unfolds, where it's like joy because he's about to smash it, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh Jesus, and that's the end. When the movie of his incredible career comes to be written, they'll just show that shot from the crowd, and that's the end. And it's like cinematic, and in a way it's fitting that the end is so brutal and severe, because that's what he would have done to people along the way. He would have ended anybody's career if he could have, if he had to win. He's a cutthroat killer, and at the end here we're like, oh, he's nice, he's you know, selling all those rackets and clothes and credit cards and whatever it is. But actually, at its heart, Federer was a cold hard killer who played a beautiful game, and sport's brutal.
It's really interesting to hear that was Emma's reaction, because it kind of was like watching a great stand-up comedian not be funny anymore, and everyone getting a bit uncomfortable. And that's what the third set was. I saw that tweet of yours. I was afraid you'd reference it because I haven't seen that show, so I would have had to go along with it. I'd have been nodding along to you. But
I've spoiled a bit for Eoin because he hasn't got there yet either. I mean, I thought you millennials were supposed to use COVID to catch up on this shit. Do your homework.
Another that's a kind of it's a neat summary, because he did used to embarrass people in the mid-noughties. I mean, he had that run of winning 5 Wimbledons in a row, and at the end, I mean, I think the 2007 final was also against Nadal. That wasn't competitive, really. And at that stage, you kind of start to hate Federer a bit. I was actually a friend of mine texted me yesterday towards the end of the third set, and he was like, do you remember when we used to hate him?
Yeah.
Because he's that dominant. You know, it was no fun.
No.
It was like watching
boring.
PSG and Man City. It was like these guys, it's like he's an unfair advantage because he's a genetic freak.
Well, there was that
he doesn't sweat and he's too easy for him.
There was that era where Tiger was winning everything by 10 shots, where Michael Schumacher ruined Formula 1 by being so much better than everybody else, and Federer kind of ruined tennis by not having rivals. But then eventually the rivals came, and they are going to knock him off his perch. And that's sad, but again, that is the game, and the game stays the game.
But it's been a slow decline, really, since the 2010s, because he hasn't won the French Open since 2009, which is the only time he won it. And he hasn't won the US Open since the 2000s either. And really, when Novak Djokovic got his act together and changed up his diet and became a much fitter player in 2011 onwards, he started dominating, and Rafa Nadal continued his French Open dominance, and there wasn't much room left for Federer. He's sprinkled the odd Grand Slam here and there. I mean, he only won Wimbledon 3 years ago, which is, you know, people probably forget. 2017. But he won the Australian Open 3 years ago. So it's not that long ago he's winning Grand Slams. But it's been a real sharp decline because of the injury layoff. And now he's so human looking. And I don't want to see Federer like this, you know. And I mean, as I said, Hubert Hurkacz's a fine player. He's 14th seed. He won the Miami Open earlier this year, which is a Masters 1000 event with very significant ranking points. Beat a lot of very good players. And he's the highest ranked player Federer has played since Federer's return. But, you know, he's at best ruthless when he's hitting well, and he was attacking Federer's backhand constantly in this match. And Federer's footwork was atrocious. I mean, the slip I completely forgive him about, because it was just that, it was a slip. But he could not get his feet sorted for ground strokes in the baseline. Yeah. And Hurkacz kept on targeting him. And that was the, say it again, the same word, that was the cruelty of it, because Hurkacz, who Federer is his hero, that's exactly how he was targeting him. Like Federer would have targeted Hurkacz back in the 2000s, because Federer would have done this to the type of player that Hurkacz is in the last decade.
Yeah.
And, you know, time has no respect for anybody, and that's kind of the beauty of sport at the same time.
Yeah, they're calling it a humiliation in the papers, and like
the third set was not the first two.
Well, I know, but part of me thinks he should come back and have like a goodbye tour where he announces to everybody, "This is my last one," and so he plays every match in centre court, and you know, because he like.
I just don't think so. I don't think
so either. But
that's another 12 months away. You know, he'll be nearly 41. I think he'll play the US Open this summer. I think that's what people should be focusing on.
See, I'm not sure he will after that. I think that's up for grabs now, isn't it?
No, well, I mean, he's only playing to win, right? So if he doesn't think he can win, he won't play the Grand Slams. That is, he might play other tournaments. I think he'll play the US Open with one last chance to win it, a Hail Mary, if you will. But then he has to wait all the way till January for the next slam. And that's another 6 months away, and his body could be 6 more months in decline. But he, in the post-match press conference, while he said, I don't know if I'm going to play next year, and it was quite downbeat, he also said, well, I want to give myself some time to get properly match fit and just sharper in general. He actually said matches weren't really the issue. It was just finding that form and fitness and training. So he could give himself a few more months. But, as far as his centre court aspiration goes, unless he plays the seniors tour and comes back for several highlights, which I'm sure he will over the years, I think that would be his last ATP match there. And he still hasn't decided on the Olympics. He still hasn't made a decision whether he's going to play. And I think it would be great if he did, because that's best of 3 and it's a depleted field. And he'll have huge support in Japan. His clothing line is Japanese. He's massive support over there. But he hasn't made a decision on it. I don't think he's that bothered. I think he just wants the Grand Slams. And who could blame him? He deserves to pick and choose, doesn't he?
You mentioned there that it's obviously been a while since Federer has won a slam, so maybe it was never going to make that much of a difference. But the draw looked tougher with Federer there in the context of Novak Djokovic. Men's tennis just looks tougher when Roger Federer is around. And it's based on reputation only, but that's the way it seems. Are you concerned at all about the men's game going in a direction where Djokovic's stranglehold gets even tighter? It is a stranglehold right now, but it gets even tighter. And the prophecy made on the show by Jenny Claffey the other morning does come through, that not only does Djokovic healthily beat the Grand Slam record, but he gets to 30.
I think, I was kind of nodding along with Jenny when she was saying that on OTB AM this week, because maybe 30's slightly out of reach, but it's not unrealistic either. And we're saying this about a 34-year-old man, Djokovic, and he could have 11 more Grand Slams in him, but he could, because he's clear favourite for 3 of the 4 slams every year, and he'll play for at least another 3 to 4 years, and he's probably favourite for all 4 now after beating Nadal at the French. In terms of Federer's danger at Wimbledon for Djokovic, only on paper.
Yeah.
Only on paper. Like Djokovic has beaten Federer 3 times in the final recently, 2014, 15 and 19 at Wimbledon. And Federer had 2 championship points 2 years ago. That was his chance. No, it's not. Men's tennis is in a good place. It's just Djokovic is Messi and Ronaldo, and the rest are Haaland and Kane. It's in terms of the contenders. Matteo Berrettini's a fine player. He's in the semi-final against Hurkacz. He won Queen's, the warm-up tournament, and he's only dropped 2 sets so far. And Denis Shapovalov, who Djokovic is playing the semi-final, is a brilliant Canadian. He dismantled Andy Murray and is a very exciting left-hander. And there's loads of other players. Alexander Zverev, Stefanos Tsitsipas, Daniel Medvedev, Dominic Thiem. There's enough. But it's just Djokovic is so much better than the rest. Just like Federer was so much better than the rest in the 2000s. It doesn't mean it's uncompetitive. It just means that somebody has to take 3 sets off Djokovic. That's the problem with this. They can all beat them in best of 3. Best of 5 is a different story. But Djokovic is the outlier. And the rest of men's tennis is very healthy. That's the best way I can say it. But I don't think Federer was a threat to Djokovic at all. I think Djokovic would have wanted Federer in the final.
Oh, yeah, totally, because he would have annihilated him.
Yeah.
He would
more than Berrettini. Way more than Berrettini.
It would have been a humiliation, and that would have been much harder for...
Well, that's a good question. Would that have been worse?
Yes.
Was
yes. Not even close. Djokovic humiliating Federer in Wimbledon, because it kind of has happened, hasn't it?
He's never humiliated him, but he's beaten him well in 2014, 15, 2019. Federer should have won it.
But there's nothing wrong, guys. Again, to come back to it, with reality being put in front of you, that you've obviously got a relatively complicated relationship with Federer, Colm, but...
Excuse me, how did you start the show with today being a national day of mourning, just because reality's been put in front of you? Excuse me?
Yeah, well, the reality of the tennis game is different to the reality of the football game, let me tell you. It is vastly different.
Is it?
It is, because I say it is, okay? And I can contradict myself in any way I like, but I do think that you would be getting wound up a little bit by the romanticism of Roger Federer, rather than realising that he's actually up against a force that is greater than anything else we've ever seen in tennis.
I think the comparison with Muhammad Ali at the start was brilliant, though, because it's really difficult to watch.
Yeah, it was eyes closed, or either do what Emma did and walk away. It was one or the other. But sure, at least in this competition, you've finally come around to Nick Kyrgios. So that's good.
Yeah, we need to do a revisit.
It was a great text again.
It's important, I think, that we open our mind to these things. It's mad that Nick Kyrgios is now the saviour of tennis. How that happened And how it happened quickly. We blinked and it was like, oh, curious. Jeez, he's great, isn't he?
Do you know what? I'm having Djokovic as the saviour of tennis after all these conversations we've had on the show over the last little while. Just to see, look on screen there. This is what we're here for. This is why we come to work every morning to see Ger like that, to see Colm trying to justify Roger Federer's existence. I think Djokovic is saving the sport right now, and if it's making people like you look like that, then I think that's a positive enough for me.
Owen playing to the YouTube crowd.
Yeah, try his diet, Owen. Let's see how you get on. It's maybe you could end up playing for Kerry. It's not too late. We make a rule of never talking about Piers Morgan on this show. We don't make a rule like that, but I'm inventing one now.
Speak
right?
for yourself.
It's a good rule, right? And I'm trying to stick to it, but I can't because he's involved. He's somehow managed to butt his way into the tennis conversation, and unfortunately, the people in tennis have bitten and have taken the bait. My favourite quote about pressure in sport: there is no pressure in Test cricket. Real pressure is when you're flying a mosquito with a Messerschmitt up your arse, says Keith Miller, who is some cricketer. I don't know who he is, right? I'm not a cricket historian. I don't know who Keith Miller is, but there's a picture of him walking off and being clapped off. So I presume he was like a good, stiff upper lip British cricketer who, by the sounds of it, flew a plane in some conflict at some point, right? 2 World Wars and 1 World Cup. CC at Andy_Murray. Andy Murray makes the fatal mistake of getting involved. Now, maybe they've already been involved, I don't know. I had tuned out of Piers Morgan. No question, flying a fighter plane in the war would be unbelievably stressful. Pressure comes in many different forms. You praised Jorginho for how he handled incredible pressure yesterday. What's your point? Piers Morgan is like, yes, I got faith. That's so good, sucked in. My point is that pressure's all relative. Sporting pressure is nothing like the pressure many people have to face in the real world. If you want to be a top sportsman, you have to handle the heat and should never quit. I know you agree with this, so just say, you're right, Piers. Call me daddy. Call me daddy. And then the first one, the first tweet, the first reply is absolutely never quit, and him, Piers Morgan, that is, storming off because somebody said that he was talking nonsense about taking the knee. I think it was about taking the knee.
It was Meghan Markle, wasn't it?
Was it Meghan Markle?
Yeah, I think
this is absolutely diabolical behaviour. Sorry, can't do this. And then Andy Roddick, out of nowhere, decides, right, I'm going to have a piece of this too. Andy Roddick comes in and has that gif of him walking off. Then, hi mate, I'm talking to a Wimbledon champion, so maybe sit this one out, says Piers Morgan. And then, fair play, I'll have my seat. You can have your hypocrisy. I will say that between you and I, one of us was number one at our job. You've had your attention now. And then it's like, I've got 7.9 million Twitter followers. You've only got 1.4. Do the math, buddy, and pipe down. That's it. But I presume this is all about Raducanu and that. Is that what that conversation is about?
Yeah. It's total bullshit. Like, Raducanu was suffering towards the end of the first set against Tomljanovic, just like any player suffers with any injury, and couldn't continue the match. And I mean, that's it really. And thankfully she was okay. But she was physically affected by the enormity of the situation. It caught up with her, but it's not like it was mental weakness. It just physically caught up with her, and she physically couldn't play anymore, and she was advised not to by the medics. And she didn't play, and she's 18-year-old. It was her first ever real tournament, let alone Grand Slam, let alone Wimbledon, and she'll be back. But the discord was ridiculous. The fallout was unbelievable. I mean, it should have just been completely respected that, yeah, she couldn't continue playing anymore, just like Serena Williams couldn't continue playing after the first round when she got injured midway through the first set, just like Kyrgios had to pull out against Felix Auger-Aliassime. It's just a withdrawal, but people have jumped on it. And I hope she has good people around her. I think she does, because it was nonsense.
Even that day, Colm, but before she even went out, there was like multiple different montages on BBC. You see a British player come along, and it doesn't matter what ranking they are, it doesn't matter what their immediate ceiling is. If they're in the middle rounds of Wimbledon, England just goes into a state of frenzy, not unlike that of the national football team, for example. And I think it's an even higher, more pressurised scenario to be in Raducanu's situation than to be on the football team, bizarrely, even though I would have always thought that the England football team were under the worst pressure of any sports football team in the world, or a sports team in the world. And I think what we've seen this week is actually, no, being a young British tennis player is an awful place to be.
Well, you're on your own. I mean, that's the first thing. It's an individual sport, so at least the footballers can confide in each other if they're feeling down. But and they can share that stress and experience. But with Raducanu, she was interviewed by Sue Barker, and Sue was asking her, well, how many people had you played in front of before Wimbledon? What was the max capacity? And she said, oh, maybe a couple of hundred. So that's how her life has dramatically changed in the last week.
Yeah.
But besides all that, even if she was an experienced pro at 29 years of age, had won a couple of Grand Slams, she withdrew because she physically couldn't continue playing, and that should have been where it ended. But you're right, Eoin, they completely overhyped her. They put her on BBC One weeknight, no Euros on. They wanted millions to watch her, which is fair enough. It's clever producing, but they just amped up the pressure, and she hadn't beaten anyone of massive significance. She just had really good results.
Okay.
Too much.
Colm, good stuff. Thanks a million for that. Cheers.
Cheers.
8:56, that's Colm Boohig, our resident tennis guru, winning people over to the Nick Kyrgios camp. I suppose, when the alternative is your camp, Eoin, I'm happy to be in the Kyrgios camp. 8:56, as I said this morning here on OTB AM. If you want to get in touch, we'd love to hear from you. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. We're going to have John Duggan with us in just a second. Andy Mitten is going to join us at around about 9:05, and we'll talk to Sue about what you should be watching on TV this weekend at around about 9:20. Jamie says England would have scored regardless. Denmark were out on their feet. Kane was also fouled in normal time, which was even clearer, but no penalty given. England more than deserved it. Colm says England only have a chance to win if they're hosts. I don't think they fix the games, but there is certainly favouritism towards them, although more in 66. But still, good to see that the grudge still being born.
What does England deserving it have anything to do with the terrible decision from the officials? There's absolutely no connection between those two things whatsoever.
John Duggan, good morning to you.
Ger and Eoin, how are we doing?
Good. What's going on in the world?
Small matter of it coming home, 55 years on, and we'll talk about that in a second. We'll just go through the sports news before we do so. So England 2-1 winners over Denmark last night. Harry Kane with the winner in extra time. Schmeichel saved the penalty, but the rebound went in. And Harry Kane says the team have done everything right so far.
Of course, there's always that feeling in the back of your mind that we've got one more to go, so we don't want to get too carried away. But I'm extremely proud to obviously be the captain of the side. We've shown great resilience. We're a credit to each other, not just the players who play, but the whole squad, the staff. And look, we're excited for obviously a final on our home ground.
We are a credit to each other. That should be all our Twitter bios. We are a credit to each other.
Yes. Harry Kane doesn't play the modesty card well, does he, John?
It's like so. I've been told to say these lines, but I don't really believe them.
I think they probably it's almost like you pull a string on a toy and they just have these lines baked in the cake. So I don't think it really would matter where or when they'd say them. Italy, 8 o'clock on Sunday. They'd never beaten England at a major competition before in 4 attempts. Shamrock Rovers work to do next Tuesday in the second leg of their Champions League first qualifying round tie. A 2-0 defeat to Slovan Bratislava yesterday. 3 League of Ireland sides in Europa Conference League action tonight. Dundalk welcoming Newtown of Wales, Storia Park for a 5:45 start. Then 2 clubs in Iceland, Sligo Rovers to play FH at 7. Bohemians to take on Stjarnan from 8:45. Tennis-wise, you've heard from Colm there. Women's semi-finals day. Ash Barty, the top seed, playing Angelique Kerber before Arnia Sabalenka meets Karolina Pliskova. Rugby-wise, the third wave of that pandemic in South Africa, very serious. It reached the British and Irish Lions camp. 12 people in isolation, including 8 players. One of those, Conor Murray, who missed the 54-7 win over the Sharks. Bundy Aki among the try scorers. Captain for the day, Ian Henderson, says it's unfortunate for Murray.
I suppose it's the nature of the beast that we've been dealing with probably for the last 18 months or whatever. Games have been called off with club and country, and by this stage I think players are kind of getting used to the topsy-turvy nature, but I'm sure this one here for him will be disappointing. But knowing Conor, he'll bounce back. He'll be as happy as possible with the hand that he's been dealt, and he'll be preparing in whatever way the support staff are going to be able to prepare him for the next time he's going to be able to train or play.
The first round of the Scottish Open underway. The Renaissance Club, Robert Rock leading on 2 under par. Porter Carrington, Graham McDowell, they just teed off. Rory McIlroy, Jonathan Colwell, Cormac Sharvin, all in the field. Seamus Power in action over the John Deere Classic. Leona Maguire also in action in the LPGA Tour event in Ohio. And 8 flat races, lads, at Leopardstown from 4:40.
Num Chumsky says, don't worry, lads. When we bring it home, we promise to let you have a look at it. Thanks, Num. Jamie says, so bitter. England's rock-solid defence, better players, bench and home crowd. We'll see them beat Italy. That's what we're worried about. That's exactly what we're worried about, Jamie. The team is pretty good.
He is right. That is a nail on the head, and that is the whole point of this morning. Because
John, you asked a very prescient question. What do we want yesterday? How did you feel? How do you feel now?
Well, the first act of treachery that I've committed this morning was to kind of reveal that I backed Meath yesterday at 16-1 to beat the Dubs. I think that is the first act of treachery. The second one, which would put me in the Tower of London in the gallows, would be to support England against Italy on Sunday. And I feel like, as positive as I feel, and I don't want to be a hypocrite when I'm supporting Tottenham Hotspur for over 3 decades, and Harry Kane is our main man, and I've got English relations. My nephews are English, half Irish. My brother-in-law's English. I have a big affinity towards the country and their people. But I just can't. I don't think I can go through with it. I don't think I can support England on Sunday, because I can't disassociate the likeable Southgate and the likeable players and players like Raheem Sterling and Marcus Rashford especially, who's advocated such social change, from the nationalism that's just swirls around this England team. And I just don't think I can go through with supporting them when you have warm, friendly Catholic cousins over in Italy that play bellissimo football. You have England, and I actually ran a poll last night, lads, and MRBI be proud, because I think I got about 2,000 responses, and that's kind of what you'd normally see in the paper for an election and stuff. 88% will be supporting Italy on Sunday. 12% will be supporting England. Now that poll is now being actually exclusively revealed on OTB AM here this morning.
Right.
I don't know if I can go through with the Daily Mail and the Sun and Boris Johnson and Priti Patel.
The worst of the worst.
I just don't think I can cope with it. So I've been conflicted. I'm at the altar of it, but at the altar, I'm just going to leg her back into the arms of the Azzurri, I think, on Sunday.
I take the Rachel Italy, England.
Would we be on that level in Ireland? Like, could we see like Micheál Martin and Leo Varadkar doing a Patel or Johnson on it? Like, they're, especially the Boris Johnson level of nationalism and the massive flag. I still think even Shane Ross might not be capable of that level. Am I wrong? Am I completely naive?
You are. I mean, Shane Ross is absolutely the perfect example.
Would he stand on a massive tricolour outside his massive hockey course?
I think he would have body painted himself green, white and orange. Yeah. That's what would have happened.
Yeah, you're probably right, actually.
Well, left nothing to the imagination.
I think that one of the really sad things that's happened in the UK in the last few years is that the culture wars that existed in America for so many years that the Republicans have exploited, and this is just a personal view, just a personal, people might disagree, I think has come into English society in the last few years with Brexit, and with the stoking of that by the Tories has been really, really depressing to see. And I think that it's something that, as somebody who's very much a European, I think Irish people are much more European in their outlook even before Britain left the EU. So I'm into European culture. I'm into, the end of conflict. And as a Republican, I just see there's a nationalism around the England team that doesn't really gel well with my thought process.
I mean, I'm obviously, I love Jack Grealish as a footballer, as like somebody who has made me fall back in love with the club team that I've supported since I was 12. But like you, I'm reaching the very end of the tournament, and I've told everybody I've met for the last month that I think England are going to win it. Now at the very last minute, like you, JD, I'm like, I mean, do I really want it to come home? Do I want to see what it would be like? As an experiment, I'm quite interested in what it would be like if football came home. But at the same time, I'm not sure I really want to actually bear witness to it. After I die, fine. Like, I win 6 tournaments in a row. Happy days.
Let your children and your grandchildren deal with that. Like, the thing that's making it worse, then, it's like there's almost kind of like an end of relationship feel to it, where they're even repulsing you more than they were already repulsing you by their mere existence. Like Declan Rice last night, going over to the crowd after the full-time whistle, getting them geeing up, that pissed me off so much. And there's no reason why that should piss me off. There's no reason whatsoever that I should feel any...
There's a smugness, though. There's a smugness to Declan Rice that would annoy you. Anyway.
But, like, I mean, there's smug people everywhere. We're all smug.
We'd love it. We would love if he was being smug on our behalf.
And we would all do the exact same thing. I would do the exact same thing about his Declan Rice. Like, there's so much hypocrisy to what I'm saying here, but it still doesn't change the fact that it annoys me so much.
I have the answer here. I have the answer. Owen, you can find yourself a PCR test or whatever, get yourself to Wembley, get on that Kerry jersey and be in the Italian crowd.
Someone's got to do it.
I would love to, John.
I was watching the game with a couple of people last night, and somebody made the point at the end, what they were doing looked just like the Dubs. I was like, I mean, it was just like Dublin.
Which part now?
The very end, where they were just playing keep ball and killing the game, where they'd made the tactical switch, they'd brought off one of their attacking players, they brought on somebody whose job it was just to be Kieran Kilkenny, pass, metronome, pass, keep, disappear, shift, shimmy, and it was like, ooh, the English football team and Dublin, a twin track. I mean, you're a Dub, John, so you probably don't get this, but like, is that ringing any bells for you, Eoin?
It is to a point, but England, we've got to remember, had a 1-goal cushion. Like, the olays from the crowd are supposed to happen. It comes down automatically in FIFA, or it used to when I was playing it, after a 3-0 lead. And when you were at 1-0, it's still a pretty precarious place to be doing it. The Dubs fans do it because they're 7 points up against Tyrone and they know that they're going to win. There was still a chance in that scenario that Denmark could snatch an equaliser. It didn't look likely, but it was still a 1-goal cushion. But I see what you're saying. It did feel like they were just kind of uninjecting the joy out of it.
And what happens if we're about to go through a period of dominance from England, just like the Dubs?
I'm not sure what John thinks of that, but I don't think that'll happen just because of the relative quality elsewhere. But
I would have found England would have. I still think what is a danger for England against Italy, they're facing a much better team who've had a day extra's rest. Pickford is a jack in the box, and they got to try and target Pickford because I think the defenders were completely unsettled by his mistakes early on in the game, and I thought Denmark were out on their feet from half-time in the match.
Yeah.
And you see this in international tournaments, teams flag, teams tire, and that's why you need your strength and depth, and that's why England are gone so far in this competition because they've had the strength in depth. Okay. They can bring Grealish on then take him off. Whereas when I'm looking at the Italian midfield, Jorginho, Verratti, Barella, they will have a lot more of the ball.
They will, and they'll know what to do with it. Yeah. John, I'm out of time. Andy Mitten standing by. I'm going to go to him in 1 second. Tell me what's on Saturday.
We have Laro. So he'll definitely have a lot of good insight, given he's been over there for so many years and has been immersed in English football culture on the Lads of Football Saturday. If the Lions goes ahead, we'll have Mike McCarthy and Niamh Briggs, which will be great on commentary. And also Carl Coney on the Tyrone Cavan game. And Dermot Gillette looking ahead to the Open, so can't wait for that on Saturday.
Sounds like a great show. Good stuff, John. Thanks very much for that. That's John Duggan on News Talk on Saturday. Of course, you can hear him and read him on otbsports.com. It's 9:07. Here's what's on OTB Sports Radio today. There's no Euro show today, but the final preview will be with Eamon Dunphy tomorrow, which we're very much looking forward to. OTB Gold is Centaur with Declan Murphy. The History of Sport panel at 3 o'clock. Our retro panel is Capturing Great Sporting Moments. Jerry Eisenberg talking about Muhammad Ali at 6, and the show is live tonight. Very interesting to see what everybody makes of the performance last night. Andy Mitten is with us. Andy, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning. Just got up. I was at Wembley until late last night, and I was at Wembley the night before, so I got up especially to speak to you. I've really enjoyed the last 2 nights, not just the games, but the sense of occasion, being part of a huge football crowd, just shy of 60,000 between Spain and Italy, and then well over 60,000 between England and Denmark. I didn't think that there were 27,000 empty seats inside Wembley last night. It was packed, but the atmosphere at both was exceptionally good. I thought both games were really enjoyable. I've really enjoyed this tournament. I last spoke to you a week ago. Since then, I went to Baku via Georgia and came back and been watching top-class games every day. I've always been a little bit hit and miss with international football. Club football's always been my focus, and by the time a football season finishes, I've had enough. But this has been different, and I've really enjoyed it. I appreciate I'm being paid to cover it as a journalist, and I'm very fortunate. But I've enjoyed the football. I've enjoyed meeting the fans, travelling around. Travel's been very complicated. But last night, to see England go through to a final, well, I've never known England in a final in my lifetime, and England have underachieved massively given the size of the country in the footballing terms, and even in population terms. Denmark's population is 5 million people. England's is 55 million people, and you saw the strength in depth that England had against a Danish team who I watched them in Baku, and I was tired flying back from Baku, and I had not played a game of football. So those Danish players must have felt all that travel. So yeah, England have had the advantage of playing at home, but Denmark have also played at home as well. Denmark obviously lost Christian Eriksen, and England have been pretty fortunate with injuries and with the results. But I do think Gareth Southgate and the England team deserve a lot of the praise which is being lavished upon them. And the English are not shy to get excited and get completely carried away with a little sniff of success. I speak of my own mother, who's not been inside a football stadium for decades. She came to see me in London on Monday and was walking around shops trying to get hold of St George's flags. And she said, I'm going to wave them on the train back to Manchester. You go for it, Mum. I mean, what can I say to that?
You must be loving it as well, Andy. I appreciate your coming on an Irish show this morning, and you're probably deliberately trying to tone it down, I guess. But look, here's a free pass. Come rub it in our faces.
We're not taking it well, by the way. We should tell you that. This is you join us after 2 hours of we've declared a day of national mourning, by the way.
The last thing I am would be a big England fan. I've got really mixed feelings about England. When I look at England's fan base and I mix among fans, I see a lot of very good people and I see a lot of idiots as well. And working as a journalist and travelling around and being a television journalist on this one, you get the camera out and people just start jumping around behind you, nowhere more than in England. And you add alcohol into that mix. And I just said to a guy the other day, what are you doing? Why are you jumping around behind me? He went, what does mean? I mean, what? I'm just doing my job. I'm speaking about football and you're just jumping around behind me. And maybe I shouldn't have done that, but that's what I felt. But in Seville, a couple were flamenco dancing behind me. And you go in the other countries and people just put the thumbs up behind you. Look, it's brilliant for England. It's easy to be cynical, sceptical about England when you're from Manchester. If you look at the flags at England matches, they're not from Liverpool, they're not from Manchester. It's provincial. It's from football clubs who don't go and play European football. It's almost impossible to follow a club like one of the clubs who are in Europe and follow the England national team. Some people do it, but I got the tube last night and I listened to the conversations and it was, where you from, mate? Hartlepool. We're Bladesers. We're from Sheffield. We're Coventry. And brilliant. Why shouldn't they enjoy this? And they've got a good team, finally. And I spoke to Nemanja Vidic 2 days before the game to do an article for The Athletic, and he just picked out defending, which he knows a thing or two about, and he just said this England team's been built on caution, on a defence, and he thinks that Gareth Southgate would have been hammered if he got that wrong, but he didn't. He's got it right, and Vidic said he's been brave, and it was euphoric in Wembley last night, coming out of Wembley, listening to all the fans singing the songs. All right, they didn't have anything as good as the Italian national anthem from the night before. And I enjoyed it all, you know. I divide my time between Spain and Manchester. So my children told me on this trip that we're Spanish, we support Spain. And it was great to see them engage in football. Their girls are 7 and 10 years old. They've never been so excited about football before. And my wife said this, the youngest one, she was asking about the Spain-Italy game, and when it came on, she watched it. And I said, what, she watched a whole football game? She went, no, she lasted 4 or 5 minutes before she put YouTube on then. And I give them one example of my mum at one end of the age spectrum and my youngest daughter at the other. It's only football. It can do this to people. It's bringing happiness. I think you need that at the moment. I'm seeing it in the real world, be it in Copenhagen, which was fantastic, and more so in England. Yeah, probably because more of the games have been here, and the England national team is flying. So
can we tease this out a bit? Because we've constantly talked about how the quality of the international football matches was never anywhere near as good. It wouldn't approximate Champions League matches, but I definitely felt that semi-final between Italy and Spain The bravery of the players in midfield in particular, and playing out from the back where there's 3 or 4 players around you, you still make that pass and you pass it hard and you know that player is going to control it, turn around and find a pocket of space. It was as good, and I enjoyed it as much from a technical perspective as any football I've seen, including some of the Champions League games that we were coming on here going, this is so amazing that they've got this collection of players who are capable of doing this. Like, maybe international football is catching up in quality, certainly at these tournaments. And I don't know, it feels like it's brilliant. And it's more important, I think it's more important particularly because countries are buying clubs and proxy wars are being fought out, and the sports washing is a real thing with the clubs, that it's kind of harder for the countries to be involved in that, because they're just not. Like, we know that there is nationalism involved already. We accept that, and I don't know, international football is back, baby.
Oh yeah, you talk about that Spain-Italy game. It was fantastic, and the way that Spanish midfield in the first half, and I'll pick out, well, Busquets, he's been there and done it. Pedri, 18 years old. Pedri was playing for Las Palmas, and he wasn't even a starter 1 year ago. Las Palmas are a second division team in Spain. And I was just watching this thinking, they're taking the game to the Italians, they're having more of the possession, they're pinging the ball around. Luis Enrique, who's brave, and I keep using that word, he brought in Eric Garcia, 20 years old. You had Laporte, who's French, by the way, playing for Spain. And Italy couldn't get hold of the ball. First half last night, I thought the England midfield struggled. I thought the Danish midfield, and I'd watched them closely in Baku, Delaney, and I had to check Delaney. Was he born in Cork or Galway? Well, no, he wasn't. You know, this is, the world is changing and people are moving far more readily than they used to do. And Højbjerg, and they were brilliant against the Czech Republic. And I think Denmark faded a lot in the second half, but isn't that inevitable? Look where they're bringing their pool of players from. And when you're talking Spain and England, you're talking 45, 55 million people. They've become football factories. They've had to develop the players. The coaching standards are higher. The facilities are much higher. Go back 30 years and top players were in Spain especially, they weren't even playing on grass when they were coming through. Now the facilities are fantastic. Every village has a really good 4-3G pitch. And we're seeing the results of that on these wonderful pitches, because all the pitches are pretty uniform now. And then Italy came into it. Italy, I felt, didn't even have most of the possession and yet controlled the game. Spain didn't have the strikers. England last night, they struggled in the final third, and then they had a little bit of class. And I'm sure you might have discussed the penalty this morning.
We did a bit,
there.
yeah.
I mean, I'll be honest, I was sat 150 metres away from it. I had no idea whether it was a penalty or not. Absolutely no idea. So that's another thing from a spectator perspective. You're seeing far, far more with your HD TVs, which fill up half your walls in your houses or flats or wherever. And you just go in with the flow in the stadium on this big wave of emotion, and it's full of ironies, and you can be cynical. Why are people singing Atomic Kitten? Or, in fact, why is every single person around me singing a song by a teen band 20 years ago? But why not get lost in that sense of abandon? Football can do that. And I said it before, it's only sport. It's not that important, but it felt important walking out of the game last night.
It's on balance, and now at the end, as we are, the bigger tournament and it going all over Europe. You know, when it came out, I was definitely, no, this is a ridiculous idea. It's just Michel Platini trying to get votes. And maybe that was the impetus for it. And I still know people like the one country having the whole tournament because everybody comes together and there's a much bigger mix. But actually, with the way that there are so many immigrant communities all across Europe, you can definitely create atmosphere in all of these cities, because almost every city that we're playing, and maybe with the exception of Baku, has huge populations of whatever the countries are. If Poland were supposed to play here, like, there's 35,000 Poles living in Ireland, it would have been amazing. But we didn't get to see it. If England and Germany played here, it would also have been amazing. We didn't get to see it because of COVID. But I'd like that to happen. I think there was the bones of a really good idea here, and we should stick with it for the tournament after the next one, which obviously has already been decided where that's going.
Yeah, and you asked me this last week, and I was pretty optimistic. And the point about the immigrant and the expatriate populations is totally true. They're very different to hardcore football fans. If you looked at the England fans in Rome, they're middle-class expats who are teachers or engineers, and that's for better or for worse because they're not booing the national anthem, for example. And if you go to the mega cities like your London or your Paris or Barcelona, there are tens of thousands of people, in Barcelona. I know many Irish people, for example. My worry with the format is logistics. It's very expensive to travel around, and it's all right when there's hardly any fans. Your hardcore fans are still going to want to travel. Wales would have had 6,000 in Baku, and for them just to then click a switch and go, right, we now need to be in Copenhagen at 4 days' notice. I don't know whether the solution is in charter flights. It's just a lot more expensive. And people aren't going to need the paperwork because of COVID in the future. But I definitely see merit in, maybe it's the nationalism of teams playing at home as well, the Danes in Denmark, the Spanish in Spain, and also the locations of the cities. Spain in Seville. Spain will never play in Barcelona because Catalans are not overly bothered. The Dublin point, I booked flights to Dublin. I was really sad not going to Dublin or to Bilbao. The one thing you have got is Bono. That song he sings chiseled its way into my head for weeks and weeks.
It's in the stadiums, is it?
Yeah. So right, it's in the stadiums all the time.
I've only heard it once.
Around the cities.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I'm hearing it about 60, 70 times per day, right? Because all the advertisers who have paid into this have paid for the jingle. So I loved early U2. I've got all the U2's albums, and some of the later stuff, okay, a bit of hit and miss, but Bono's voice, and this little jingle, I'm waking up. Now, the only thing that has superseded this is the Italian national anthem. Now, why is this happening to my brain? This is all subconscious, this. So I woke up yesterday morning in London with the Italian national anthem pinging around my head, smiling, thinking this is beautiful, it's a beautiful song. And then you say this on Twitter and then you get, actually, this anthem is built around modern day slavery. Oh, I'm just not bothered for that. Maybe I should be, but I'm enjoying it and visiting all of the different cities. There's so many positives been pulled out of this. Negatives, high ticket prices, although a lot of the fans in the cheap seats. I met Italians and Spaniards who paid €70 to watch the game at Wembley. It's not off the scale. Ticket prices for Sunday, trust me, will be a lot more than €70. I know people who were being quoted. And one of the lads I overheard on the train from Hartlepool, he paid £660. And he's a working class lad for his ticket last night. He said, worth every penny. I'll remember it for the rest of my life. And I'm thinking, I told my wife I paid £660 for a game of football, but she'd be mad at me. But everyone's coming at it from different perspectives. And I think it's put a smile on the faces of a lot of people at a time when that has been needed. Even if it's people in Ireland engaging, sending me tweets saying, this is disgraceful. I hope that Italy absolutely smash England because of the arrogance or what perceptions. Perceptions. People are waiting for England to do something to annoy them because the English are self-regarding it. It's coming home. What's coming home? And Kasper Schmeichel was absolutely right. It's never been home. And I really like that from him, that line in Danish humour.
So, what do you want to see happen on Sunday then, Andy? What is the best outcome for you as a human individual who has an emotional connection to sport?
England to win, because I'm from Manchester, which is obviously the first city of England. And I grew up as a kid. I got really into England when I was 10 and 13 and 16 and the 82, the 86, the 90 World Cup. And it was only then it started to sour when I saw Manchester United players being booed by England fans. So I want England to win because I want Luke Shaw to win. I want Harry Maguire to win. I think that Gareth Southgate is a good person. I think it's about time that England won something. And there is this huge wave of emotion and excitement, and it's going to come crashing at some point, but I think it will be far better for the English, the games being in England, if England were to win. But look, whoever deserves to win it. Yeah. I saw Bonucci jump into the crowd the other night at Wembley right in front of me, and the stewards say, to him, you know, you're not allowed on the pitch. He's like, look, I'm Bonucci. I don't care. And stuff like that makes me laugh as well. So I hope that England win, but I'm going to be really excited for the next few days.
Andy, good stuff. Great to have you with us. Enjoy it. Thanks a million.
Thank you.
Andy Mitten there giving us some balance on today's show. I think it was important that we did that.
We found, we sifted through all our contacts from England and we were like, that guy has a checkered relationship with England. We'll take that guy rather than anybody who was chest thumping last night.
That was acceptable. 9:25, we're going to take a quick break. We're back talking TV with Sue Murphy.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
The football pod with Paddy and Andy.
If the opposition can't smell blood this year, we're as well pack it in, because even if Cumberford's kickouts are as good as Cluxton's, every team is taking a step forward.
Download the OTB Sports app and subscribe to the GAA podcast feed now.
First up, a Go Loud original from News Talk.
Get all the news you need to start your day with First Up, the podcast that brings you stories, analysis and interviews with the top newsmakers. First Up, available each weekday morning from 7 a.m. on Go Loud.
Subscribe to this podcast for free on the Go Loud app.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
9:26. Sue Murphy, good morning to you. How are you?
Hi, how are you?
Good. So the way we do this every week is we pick some new and shiny stuff. We pick some stuff, if you haven't seen it, that's out, and some ongoing stuff. The new and shiny, it's mostly movies, is it?
Yeah, it's kind of documentaries, except for the Netflix one. But Black Widow is out this week. That is out. Sorry, it was out yesterday in cinemas, and it's out tomorrow on Disney Premiere. So that's the $21.99 that you can buy at home. Don't watch this on Disney Premiere. Go to the cinema, watch it in the cinema, because it's an action film. And it's not, I kind of liked it because it's not what you're expecting from an Avengers spin-off. Like, as soon as you hear Avengers spin-off, you're like, oh God, another superhero film, I just can't do another one. But it's not. I mean, she is a superhero, but it's very much in the vein of kind of being, she's like a spy. So it's very much a spy action. Lots of massive action sequences. Most of this was filmed before COVID.
Is this the Diana Rigg Avengers? Is it? Is that the original? Is that like? Is she a spy or is she a superhero?
She's a superhero because she was trained basically in the Red Room. This is Black Widow.
Okay,
so it's Scarlett Johansson's character. Yeah. So she was trained in the Red Room in Russia, but she defected to S.H.I.E.L.D. and did an undercover operation to try and get rid of the Red Room. But she discovers in the course of this film that she didn't actually finish the job, so she goes back to do it. And it's good. Like, I really liked it. I think it was good. But obviously, I was completely overtaken by the fact that I was in a cinema for the first time in 2 years to watch a press screen, and I was just so happy to be there. But also, it's just a good film if you're looking for something that's an action, like loads of big action sets and scenes. It looks incredible. It's really well coordinated. And I think she's really good as being, like, there's no kind of, oh my God, let's do this love story off to the side. There's none of that. She's just there to do a job and that's it. And it actually works quite well. I'm getting a bit sick of the Marvel Avengers spin-off, but in saying that, every time I watch them, I really like them. I loved WandaVision, love Loki. And it's just nice to see a film back in the cinema again. So it'd be well worth it. If you want to go and see something, turn your brain off for 2 hours. She's good in it.
Okay, so that's Black Widow in cinemas this week and also available on Disney Plus Premiere. The Witness, what's this?
I love this documentary, and like, I know we've talked before about true crime and how, like, you're not the biggest fan of true crime, Jerry, I know, but
that's not true. I love true crime, like really, really, really love it, but always feel very conflicted. So it's not that I'm not a fan of it; it's that I am a fan of it, but that I understand that we're all part of this, like, slightly weird obsession with other people and murdering other people.
Yeah, and like real people with real grief and death, and I think that's what comes across in this really, really well. In 1964, Kitty Genovese was murdered on a street in New York City at 3 o'clock in the morning when she was on her way home from work, and she screamed. And now, when I say scream, because they recreated it, it's really traumatic to watch. She really screamed, saying, "Please save me! I've been stabbed!" Really loud in the street. Apparently, there were 38 witnesses, and nobody came to help her. The killer had run off at one point because somebody shouted out a window, And he ran off and then came back 30 minutes later when he went, oh no, he's going to come and save this woman, so I'll just finish killing her. It's very difficult to watch because it's her brother who's following the story. So he goes back 50 years later to try and find out what happened. And he interviews some of the witnesses that he can find. Obviously, they're police records, so it's hard for him to get a hold of it. He tries to recreate what it was like for that thing to happen at 3 o'clock in the morning to her. It's a difficult watch because of his grief. He was 16 when she died. She was 28, and he worshipped her. He went to Vietnam afterwards, lost his legs in the war, always lived with this notion that nobody was going to help somebody if something happened. And it's a difficult watch. It's really, really hard, very upsetting. Like, I found it very, very difficult to watch, but brilliant, like a really good idea for a documentary. And he was the one who wanted to do it. So it's not like he's been pushed into it or anything like that, but honestly, it's really excellent.
Okay, it's called The Witness. It's on Sky, and now at the moment, so that's obviously there for good. Right, The Serpent on Netflix.
Yeah, this has been trending on Netflix this week. It was originally released on BBC at the start of this year. I think it was New Year's Day it was released, and it's Charles Sorborge, who was the bikini killer who killed, they think, 20 people on a hippie trail in Thailand. But they've confirmed 12. The first episode of this is just very chilling, because I think the tone of these kind of shows have changed over the last few years, where they show you more of the victims and they show, the victims and the impact of the victims and the people around them, rather than following the serial killer. And I think that was the old way of doing it. And it nearly worships the serial killer in a really weird way. That doesn't do that here. And because you're following the victim, the fear that you get, because you understand what's about to happen, you're just like, oh God, please don't go in there, or please don't do that thing, or it's not easy to watch in the first episode. He's very creepy, like standing in the corner of rooms with sunglasses on, watching people all the time. He was a gem dealer as well. Like, some of it is like his wig is a bit off, but it's Tahir Rahim who plays him. He was in The Looming Tower. He was really good in it as well. He's a really good actor. Really, like, menacing.
Okay, so this isn't a documentary. This is a fictionalized.
No, it's a series, but they tried to stick to the story as much as they could. And like, there's one stage where there's a Dutch couple goes missing, and the Dutch ambassador.
Is it okay to make movies of serial killers who are real as opposed to fake serial killers? Is that okay? Are we sure that's okay?
Zac Efron was a worryingly convincing Ted Bundy.
Oh yeah.
Like, is that? Are you allowed to do that?
You are.
Should we be letting that in? Is that like not a... Let's just think this through here, kids. So real human beings were murdered with bare hands by this other human being, and what we're going to do is reenact that whole thing and profit off the crazy murderer murdering these innocent people. And then you're going to sit at home on your couch.
Yeah, it's difficult for families as well. Like, if you think of the families.
Is that what we're doing here?
Yeah.
Oh, a bit of Netflix and chill. What?
I would say murderers are the most common Netflix and chill go-to content.
But if it's a fake murder that somebody invented in their heads, it's totally different, because the real family, even if it's the grandkids, aren't watching, or their friends saying, I knew that person. That person existed in real flesh and blood. Are we sure this is okay, everybody?
But I do think there is an element of, that's what I was saying about following the victims. And I think some of those families often think when things happen around these, that the serial killer is the one who's remembered and celebrated. And if you do this kind of thing right, and you talk about the victims in the right way, then I think it's, I don't know if I'm going to say okay, but I think it's better.
Okay, and it's called The Serpent after the serial killer. He's like the bikini killer, a cartoon character, a cutout, a fake thing. I don't know. I'm not saying I won't watch it.
You're making me more uncomfortable with these things every week, by the way.
I won't watch it, but
what about entertainment? What about our feelings? I'm only joking. That's it's.
Are you not entertained?
Like.
It's the same. It's the same principle.
Can you not Can you not suspend that?
What's the difference between the people sitting in the Coliseum and you sitting on your gaff getting, like high on sugar and...
Who's to say I wouldn't have said...
You're definitely ruining these things for me, by the way, Jared, because whenever I sit down and watch these now, I'm like, oh my God, Jared's going to be giving it to me.
Well, here's the thing, if you'd
a real person...
If you had a free ticket, or whatever they did, for the Coliseum back in 500 BC, you're going to the Coliseum.
Owen, you are paying a premium. You are scalping tickets outside. You are the man on the trains paying 660 quid.
A season ticket.
On his slightly dodgy Revolut account because he doesn't want the wife to find out. You are that man buying those tickets for... and we all are.
I've got a season ticket to see Maximus Prime.
Yes. And so, but like, are you not appalled? Is the point of that scene in Gladiator not supposed to be, oh Jesus, they were horrible humans watching other humans die, but we're just doing it with the remove of like the shiny veneer of Netflix.
But you're still going to watch it.
What does that say about us?
Well, it's kind of society as a whole, but you're still going to watch it.
We are society. That's us.
But you're never going to have people going, I'm not going to watch that. Like crime is massive. It's huge.
Oh, yeah.
Think of Seller and all of those things.
Oh, yeah, I know. It's just I think we should think about these things sometimes.
We have
Yeah, but you're making me feel really guilty about watching
it. I mean, that's your choice. You can... I'm not making you feel guilty.
Oh, you are.
You're feeling guilty. That's it. Like, I don't know. No, I'm not saying I'm not going to watch this.
Yeah, it's good. Unfortunately, it is good.
So, also on Love Island.
Oh, like, can I talk about Love Island for how long?
I don't know. I haven't. The music hasn't started yet.
I'm finding this year particularly difficult. Like, Owen's usually my Love Island person, and he hasn't been watching it yet because of Euros. But honestly,
Owen has been sneakily watching Love Island. Don't worry.
I would be doing nothing of the sort in terms of sneaking. I would be absolutely...
No, he's quite open.
I would be quite open about it and coming on here to suggest we talk about it at the top of the show every single morning had I been watching it. But I think it's too late, Sue. I think it's too late to get on the bandwagon. You need to be there from day one.
It's not. I really hope they get to a point where all the women in there realise that all those men are assholes and just go, do you know what, we're not going to couple up with any of them and form some kind of protest to the entire show. Like, I know it's a game show, don't get me wrong, because I've had these rows with so many people, but it's not right to be that disrespectful to people, and they are absolute scumbags. Like, I've never seen such an amount of assholes in one show in my life. Usually there's like one or two of them that are kind of nice. Not one of them is a nice guy. Like, all of them are doing this thing where they're like, oh, I really like you, like I'm 100% into you and this is great, and to stay in the show, obviously. And then on the other side going, yeah, but like, you know, if that girl comes in, like, she's really going to turn my head and I'm not really sure about that. And these are girls who have feelings. Like, two of the girls that are in these situations really like the guys and are sitting there going, okay, so you're going to, like, you might go away with someone else. Get rid of them.
And is that not the...
Gone.
Are we talking about Declan Rice here or Love Island? Just like there. I think that's the game. That's the game. You know, you got to play the game when you're in a game show. That's how it works.
No, it's not. It really isn't fair, because I know it's a game show, right? But when people's emotions genuinely come into it, you have to say, "I'm sorry, I don't feel the same way about you." They're not doing that.
Are you not supposed to not have emotions in it, though? Is that not the...
Well, it's called Love Island. You're there to be in a couple. You're there to find the love of your life.
You're not. No, you're not. You're there to...
You're there to be famous.
Wait, and like have a bit of sex. That's it.
But
right?
But honestly,
like,
can I just say...
They're not there to fall in love. So there's a...
No.
Things have moved on since, you know.
But honestly, the guys that are in it, there needs to be a very big conversation about why they think it's acceptable to talk about women in the way they talk about women. There's one stage where they were asked about personality traits, and one of the guys said, I don't like hairy arms. Sorry, what? That's not a personality trait. I nearly swore there. So annoyed.
I think that says a lot more about their IQ than... they're picking these people... I agree. Like, I mean, they're in isolation.
Central casting.
It's horrible. It's like it is horrible, some of the stuff that happens. There is no getting away from that. But again, it's kind of like what we were saying. Instead of watching a lion rip a prisoner of war to pieces in the Colosseum back in the day, we are watching the emotional ripping
somebody's heart.
Yeah.
Like, once upon a time...
Can I just say one more thing, because it really annoyed me. Like, one of the guys was like, I think she's really scared of a man taking control of the house and paying for everything and being a housewife. What? Who brought you up to think that that's the way that life operates? And that woman is like, oh my God, I'm so scared of being a housewife. I really don't know where they got these guys, but they were dragged up. It is disgraceful. They need to get them all out of there and get a whole new load of guys in.
Very briefly, like in a minute and a half, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which kind of fits the similar theme to what we were talking about, except, you know, the commodification of the murder at the centre of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. You know, maybe because Quentin Tarantino has faked the whole thing at the end. I don't know, but it's now available to watch streaming.
Yeah, on Netflix. I actually the weird thing about this is I watched it in 3 parts because it's such a long film. It's 160 minutes long. It nearly would have worked as 3 episodes or something. But the Sharon Tate thing that's played by Margot Robbie, I love the idea of what they did here, because they never really, I don't want to give away too much spoilers, but they never really go too much into the murder. It's kind of the lead up, and it's centered around Rick Dalton, who lives next door to us, played by Leonardo DiCaprio. And it's in the offing, you know it's there the entire time. You're thinking about how this poor girl is going to die, and she's quite heavily pregnant. Like, I think she's about 8 months pregnant in the film. It's honestly really good. Like, I think the performance is really good. I think it's really interesting what Tarantino did with it, because it's such a well-known story. So it's hard to not just give in to giving that story to everyone who's in the audience. But some really good performances, really long film.
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, there's a book out that Tarantino has just released about the characters involved, which is a novel. It's his first novel. He's done a really interesting interview with Mark Maron. So if you're into this, you should do the deep dive on that and probably get the book. But again, there's another, You Must Remember This, that documentary series. They did a brilliant 10-part deep dive on the Manson family and the Tate murders and the impact and the Polanski relationship and like the cast of characters involved. You could not make it up, and like a good documentary about that I would definitely watch. The movie, I might have to go back to it. I could take or leave it at the time. It was like, it definitely is an overwhelming sensory overload, but you know, if you're a Tarantino fan, you're going to love it.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it.
Right, we're late. 9:41. Sue, good stuff. That was brilliant. Thanks a million.
Thanks.
More from Sue next week at around about the same time. OTB AM is brought to you in association with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. Comment on YouTube. One of the lads asked me, would you rather listen to England fans around a major tournament or Mayo fans on the road to Croker? It's a tough one. So maybe I was wrong comparing England and Dublin. It's more England fans and Mayo. Yeah. You love the Mayo fans, Eoin.
This is like 2017 all over again when they finally got their one over Kerry. Like to be a Danish fan in that stadium last night, I reckon would have been a painful enough thing. Except for the fact that I suppose like the Danish fans of a certain vintage would have remembered being top of the mountain, but it's not a regular thing.
No. Analysis and Coaching on YouTube says all that's going on with Cluxton is he's retired. However, some inter-county players don't believe in the big retirement circus in the GAA. Well, if that's the case, say it and let the Dubs move on. But we'll have more on that, no doubt, until we get a bit of white smoke from out Parnell's direction. Tomorrow morning, Adrian and Eoin are back in studio. We'll bring you our build-up to the GAA weekend, our Euro 2020 final preview and Wimbledon with Colm Boohig. Let's hear from Devin Toner, who was part of our Lions coverage last night and off the ball, as we brought you live commentary of their 54-7 win against the Sharks. Enjoy.
So the British and Irish Lions have made it 3 wins out of 3 on their tour so far. A 54-7 win against the South Sea Sharks at Emirates Airlines Park in Johannesburg. And watching the game alongside me was Leinster second row and Ireland second row, Devin Toner. Devin, overall assessment, given the circumstances of the day that's been, where they've had COVID positive cases, they had 4 players to take out of their starting lineup, another 4 players coming out of the substitutes bench. They'd 1 back on the substitutes bench. I think they were always expected to win the game, but they went about it the right way and will probably be pretty happy overall with the way it finished.
Yeah, I think they will be very happy. I think they'll be more happy that they have no injuries as well. Thank God. But I think with all the chopping and changing before the game, and obviously with the 7 forwards and the 1 back on the bench, and of all that happened, to put 50 points on a really good Sharks team is a really good performance. So I think they can take a lot of positives from it as well.
Before we even get into the specifics of the performance, this sort of a scenario is something that yourself and every professional player has kind of been dealing with for the last year now, where there have been positive cases in camps, players have had to isolate and stuff like that. Never mind on the day of a game. How much does that just disrupt the preparation for any match?
Yeah, when it happens so late as well, we haven't had it happen so late to us. Well, I suppose we had a match postponed or cancelled against Toulon, obviously, but we haven't had the amount of disruption that the Lions have just had. So it will obviously play a part. But because it's such a new team and lads are getting used to obviously different combinations and stuff, it'd probably be easier because it's a Lions team, I suppose. But yeah, no. Again, it's just something you probably have to put up with. I think as a professional player, as a professional team, I think you got to roll with the punches sometimes, to be honest, and then just try and get on with it.
Yeah, like people always say that when it comes to a Lions Tour players, they're going to be asked to do things that you're not ordinarily going to be asked to do in a season, like playing a midweek game and playing again on a Saturday. Look at Josh Adams, who's pretty much played 3 full games. He was still out there on the 80 minutes this evening, having played the full 80 the last day, and still had enough time to wrap up his hat-trick towards the end. Like himself and Eoin van der Merwe obviously will get all the plaudits, a hat-trick apiece for them. But Josh Adams, I mean, the start he's had, 8 tries in 3 games.
Hopefully he gets a bit of a rest now. 380 minutes is unbelievable start to start, and obviously his strike rate for tries is brilliant. But I think it's just people are so impressed. I'm so impressed with his work rate and how he gets on the ball, how he gets on the end of everything, how he's just available for that little pop pass at the end. And then obviously he got that try today that where he had to work that little bit hard. He worked himself with the little chip through and everyone was just so impressed with how he played, yeah. And
talk about the pressure it's putting on others to perform now as well, because you have himself on 8 tries, Eoin van der Merwe, who's now up to 4 after his hat-trick this evening, and then it's the likes of previous Lions like Anthony Watson and Liam Williams, who unfortunately didn't get a chance to get out there this evening and play their second match of the tour. And on top of the fact that they had to be withdrawn from the game, they had to sit on and watch as both the 2 of the back 3 players that came in for them both racked up a hat-trick.
I know it's never hard seeing someone in your position do so well, to be honest. Like I know everyone in the squad, you're very happy for everyone playing well, but when you're in your position and they're going for your test squad as well, it's always hard, especially when you don't get a chance to play. Obviously Watson being taken out early today, but again, it's just lads putting their hands up for selection.
When it comes to the Irish players, I know, having been on commentary with you this evening, Ian Henderson captained the side this evening. I know you were very impressed with the shift he put in.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of pressure on his shoulders going in, not only because he was captain, obviously because he was a pack leader and because he's calling a line out as well. I think people underestimate what goes into line out calling. It's because there's so much pressure on set piece these days to keep hold of the ball. There's a lot of pressure on what lineouts to call, and I think that he did a phenomenal job today. I think they had a lot of variety in their delivery from lineout, whether they mauled it, whether they broke out and did a dummy maul, or where they went off the top. I think there was a lot of variety there, but I think he did really well in his defensive shift as well. I think he really fronted up physically and he really brought the ball or brought the game to them, and I think he just wanted to lead from the front, and I think he did that.
What goes into the process of calling the lineouts? Because obviously, I'm sure it's not just as simple as you have a penalty and you all gather yourselves and you say, "All right, we're going up at 4." That's maybe what lads are doing, what my team are doing when we're playing J3 and J4 level. I'm sure there's an element where you have an idea what call you might want, and you're getting up there and you're looking, okay, well they have whoever standing up at 2, maybe we need to change it. How much is going in and how much has been changed on the ground right there and then?
It's evolved over the years. It used to be, okay, we'll throw it to 4 here, and then we'll just go for it. But over the years, it has evolved. So, you get a penalty, they kick the touch, you go to your 10, what do we need off the top or a maul or what set piece we're going to do? So you have in your head where you need to win it. But nowadays, most teams would have bailouts. So you would make a call. Well, some teams call out of the line, some teams call in the line. They might have 1 or 2 calls with a couple of bailouts as well. So some particular teams might go in with actually 5 or 6 calls ready to go. And it's whatever, just say for instance 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Do you mean? So if you call 1, it'll go to the front. If you call 5, it'll go to the back. So everyone needs to be on edge, I suppose. So it really has evolved over the years, and obviously every caller is different, but it's a fact of having one banker in your head and then seeing if the opposition move, going to where they're not, basically. In the simplest terms, that's what it is.
And I'm sure the fun then is when you have all that for a Leinster, and then you're in an Ireland camp and you have probably another book of calls to learn, another book of processes to take care of, and you have you've the Munster lads dealing with their own versions and their changes, and the Ulster lads are the same as well. It's an incredibly complicated process of the modern game, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. But on the flip side, I'm obviously fortunate to be coached by Robin McBride. Obviously, he was the forwards coach of the Lions as well. And knowing him, he probably would have tried to do the most simplistic line-out calling structure, line-out menu for this tour. So hopefully, it probably be a little bit simpler than, say, an international team or a club team, because we get to spend so much time with each other. We can do it day in, day out, but because they've got such a short amount of time to prepare, they would have a simpler menu, and it's working. So it's they're obviously winning their balls and being able to deliver. So thankfully it's working for them.
And when it comes to like a potential test second row partnership, most people probably have Maro Itoje with a jersey on his back already. When you're looking for like who could potentially be partnering him, like what are the things do you think a coach is looking for? Is it the best player available? Is it figuring out what way a partnership works, where maybe if someone calls line out, if Itoje, for example, isn't calling line outs, he wants someone who's going to be able to do that job. So like, is it just about finding the right piece to fit in there?
I think so. To me, you need your best line-out caller, basically.
Against the box in particular.
Against the box in particular, because they're obviously a very tall team. So if I was picking a team, I would 100% have Ian Henderson down, because I think he's the best line-out caller there. Now, you do have, obviously, Tig, who can call as well. Tig Byrne, he calls for Munster. I think Maro has called a bit for England. He wouldn't probably be the most experienced line-out caller there is. Obviously, Johnny Hill as well. I think he calls a bit for Exeter. But for me, I would have Hendy down as that main line-out caller, and probably with Maro.
On the other set piece then, the scrum was probably the one area of the Lions game that actually did struggle in the opening 50-odd minutes. You did see it, though, when the likes of Tyg Furlong came on, and when Rory Sutherland and Ken Owens came on, when it was that new front row. For the few scrums there were after that in the second half, it was Lions dominating it. Do you think Robin McBride would be worried with what he saw in those opening 50 minutes, though?
I don't know, will he be worried? Yeah, maybe. It's never good seeing your front row going flat like a pancake, I suppose, in the first couple of scrums and giving away penalties. I think that's one of the areas that will probably be a little bit worrying in the reviews, is just the discipline and the amount of penalties they gave away, and they mainly came from the scrum. So, and you can see when Tig and Rory Sutherland came on that and Ken Owens, they had the upper hand, and they were winning the penalties then. So it's never really as plain to see as it was plain in that game to see, to be honest.
Yeah, and I mean, you could just see the difference that someone like Tyg Furlong brings to it.
Yeah, you can see in all facets of his game. I think he relishes the physicality of rugby. You know, he relishes the scrum. He really loves getting involved. You can see it when they were defending 5 meters from their own try line. I think he's putting his body on the line. Do you know what I mean? You might look at that and you might think that people are going to save themselves to not get injured for the test, but you see Jack Cohn, you see Tyg Furlong. I think Ken Owens was doing it as well. Everyone was putting their body on their line just and it worked. I mean, they got the turnover, and I think they ended up scoring the try off it. And it was the Navidi try that got chucked off. But I think they're really putting in defensive efforts there in 65-70 minutes. It was brilliant.
That's going to be one area that they will be very pleased about, the defensive side of things, particularly close to their own line as opposed to maybe further out the pitch, because the way the game developed in both the first and second half, the Sharks did have a good bit of possession at various times, quite close to the Lions' try line, and there were 2 or 3 occasions during that match where they just soaked up the pressure, made their tackles, won a couple of the collisions as well, and managed to eventually someone getting their hands in over the ball and winning a turnover.
Yeah, I think one of the main reasons for that was the double hits. I think they were putting in a lot of double shots, and I think in the first half in particular there was a lot of chop tackles as well from Cowan Dickey and from Simmons, and I think the back row in the first half was really putting in good hits. And then the physicality in the second half by a lot of them double hits. I think if you're getting hit by 2 people every time, it's going to be a hard day at the office, you know. And I think that's one area of the game that the Lions will be really pleased with.
How did Bundyaki go tonight? He got his try, I know, towards the tail end of the first half. Overall, your assessment of him?
Yeah, I think he did well. I think he probably would say himself that he was a bit quiet on the ball. He probably would have liked to get the ball a bit more in hand and be a bit more attacking. I know he got his try, but it was from a maul and then a pick and go, so it wasn't really flowing rugby. But I think he did really well in defence. I think he was physical and he really put it up to them. But I think, as he'd say himself, that he probably would like to get in the ball a bit more.
Any other standout performers from the game for you?
I think Hendy played great. I think the whole back row. I think Sam Simmons did really well. I think he had a really good few touches and a good few carries. I think Ali Price did really well as well. He got really one good important turnover after scramble D. And I suppose Owen Farrell did really well at 10. I think he made a lot of good decisions. People have been saying whether it's going to be Bigger or Finn Russell, but I think Owen's put his hand up for selection now in that 10 slot. Yeah, and
he really brought the back three into the game, Owen Farrell, with some of those nice little grubber kicks down the line, down in towards the corners that, you know, Lewis Rees-Zammit, Eoin van der Merwe were chasing on. Managed to judge the pace on him quite well for most of the game.
Yeah, he was just making really good decisions. I think obviously with that, with the winger getting yellow carded for the Sharks, I think he obviously has a phenomenal rugby brain. Like he's an incredibly smart rugby player, and he obviously knew that there was space in behind, so he was putting through them grubbers. But again, yeah, as I said, he was just making really good decisions of whether to keep it alive or tuck it up and carry himself or kick it. So he had a really good game.
In your own opinion, is he best served as an out half or a centre? Where do you think England or Saracens tend to get the best out of him?
Yeah, I think he's best as a 10, to be honest. I think he likes controlling the game, and he, as I said, he's a really good rugby brain, and he makes a lot of good decisions. So I think he's and it's always good to have a 10 who can tackle as well.
And away from the lines, you're back into pre-season training soon. You were telling me it's nearly set to go. It's mad, like, you know, there's still whatever 5 or 6 games left in a Lions campaign, and you're getting ready to get back out on the pitch in the coming weeks.
Yeah, this week and next week we have to do our own stuff, do our own runs or do our own weights, and then we're back into it. Then after the break, it seems to have flown by, but yeah, to see the new season get back up and running, it only feels like last season just ended, to be honest.
Was it a late decision to keep going for another season? I know a lot of people expected you were going to be finishing up with Leinster when you were one of those trio along with Scott Fardy and Michael Bent that was given the Pro 14 trophy, because, you know, that's been the Leinster tradition. The departing players are lifting the trophies at the end of the season. I think we all thought you were going to be moving on. Was it a late call to be staying on?
Yeah, in all honesty, I thought at that stage I thought I was going as well. It happened late enough that contract came about. And obviously delighted to be able to stay. There were other things in the mix that could have happened, but thankfully got over the line and delighted to be able to stay on for another year. But yeah, no, at the time I did think I was out the door.
And do you think, is it just another year for yourself in the game, or you?
Who knows? As the second rows get better with age, don't they? So talk to me at the end of next year, we'll see.
Exactly. Yeah, it's never good to be asking those questions in pre-season when the body's feeling great.
Exactly. Yeah.
Devin Toner, thanks a million for joining us this evening.
Thanks a million.
Listen, I was very fortunate. 2013, it was my second match on the tour. I broke my metacarpal in my hand. It split right down the middle, and the team doctors told me, if that's a fracture, you're going home. But thankfully it was actually an Australian surgeon over there. He saw the x-ray and said if I could put up with a bit of pain. He put 3 screws into it and told me I could be back out on the pitch in 3 weeks. So I think Warren Gatland did feel my tour was over when he heard I could be back available and training for the week of the second test. He obviously felt I had an opportunity to make it onto that test team, and he kept me on, and I was so grateful for it. And I think Robbie Henshaw is a guy he has earmarked for that test team, no doubt about it. So he will do whatever he has to do to keep Robbie Henshaw in the camp, getting himself back fit again. If he can play one more match before the test matches, he'll be back in. I'd be really interested. I don't know if I could see Alan Wynne-Jones come back into the touring squad again, but again, another leader like that, Warren Gatland, loves pulling a rabbit out of a hat. You know, it wouldn't be too surprised somewhere down the line Alan Wynne comes back with his shoulder strapped up and could come back into the test matches somewhere down the line.
I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I think he did. I think, you know, everyone, some
the Spanish players, they were trying to get really, really focused. But if you looked at the centre circle of the Italians, they were all smiling going into that. And you kind of, just from looking at that, not knowing what had gone on previous, if you were just looking at body language, I think the Italians looked more relaxed going into it. And I don't know, did even blag his way into winning that time cost by the way it was kind of done and retaken. They both thought they had won it, and
I think
Chiellini was always going to win out in that battle, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think I heard afterwards that apparently the coin landed on its, well, he convinced the referee, Felix Brick, that it landed on its side first, so to go again, and then the Italians won the toss the second time.
He's been great throughout the tournament. Like, we kind of speak about him and his defensive partnership in there, and kind of the last of the dying art of a real defender, and he just loves it, and the reactions he gives, he's part of what has made Italy so good to watch in this tournament. Like you said, they are maybe starting to tire a little bit, and they weren't as good as they had been in previous rounds, but you can't take your eyes off them, whether it's, like I said, the suits, the fans, the reactions when they're defending. They're still scoring absolutely amazing goals. They have you on the edge of your seat, and you kind of hope that they can just pull through for another 90 minutes and kind of give the performance that they deserve.
Just a quick mention of Jorginho's penalty as well, Karen, like the courage to take a penalty like that at such a crucial time.
Yeah, and I usually kind of hate it, seeing someone go up, and it kind of gives me anxiety when they don't do a proper run-up. But he's been so good in this tournament as well. He's been so calm, and he doesn't tend to miss. Don't think anyone really thought he was going to miss, and to have the courage to even take a penalty like that and put it past, because Spanish keeper was big, he was imposing, he was moving side to side. There was a chance he could have stood up and maybe put a foot out and stopped it, but he backed himself to go his normal route, and fair play to him, because we've seen some stinkers of penalties in this tournament. So if he had messed that up, it would have just been the tip of the iceberg. I think that everyone would have been reevaluating how penalties should be taken if he had missed it.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward.